All right, so we're just, oh, it sounds like we're mic'd up at this point. All right. So at this time, we're ready to begin the renewal school vote process. So I'll turn it over to the staff to kick us off.
Mr. Chair, for
Yes.
the recording, would you please just note that you read the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Ethics statement, so it's in the recording.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will note for the record that the Pledge of Allegiance, ethics statement, mission statement, and approval of the November minutes, as well as the agenda, were done prior to the microphone being launched. So for all our fans out there that are listening, you missed the juiciest part of the meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to make note that I'm on the call.
Yes, we have Joel Ford via conference call.
Good morning, Board. Thank you so much for your time today. So for our December renewal activity, today you will actually come forward with your recommendations that you will then send to the State Board of Education.
Mr. Chair, if, with your permission, I could start walking us through the schools
Yep.
and making motions based on our discussions.
By
I
all
think I
means.
took pretty good notes. First, Excelsior Classical Academy, we did not need to interview them. They had met the statutory requirement for a 10-year renewal, and so I move that we recommend to the State Board of Education that Excelsior Classical Academy, I got it right, be granted a 10-year renewal.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, on Henderson Collegiate, again, they did not need a interview because they have met the statutory requirements, really blowing it out of the water, this school is. And so I would like to move that we recommend to the State Board that Henderson Collegiate receive a 10-year renewal.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Lake Lure Classical has met the statutory requirements as well for a 10-year renewal, and I move that Lake Lure Classical Academy receive move that we recommend a 10-year renewal for them.
Second?
Properly moved and second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Chair, Northeast Academy of Aerospace and Advanced Technology, I believe that's the name of it, but Northeast Academy, we'll just go with that. Also, did not receive a interview because they have met the statutory requirements for a 10-year renewal, so I move that we recommend to the State Board that Northeast Academy of Aerospace receive a 10-year renewal.
Properly moved and seconded, any discussion on the matter? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, Winterville Charter Academy has received, has met the statutory requirements for a 10-year renewal. I move we recommend to the State Board that Winterville Charter Academy receive a 10-year renewal.
Second.
Properly moved and second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Now, that was the easy ones. Now we get into the ones with some more discussion. Mountain Island Charter School did have some governance warnings with testing issues and lottery mismanagement. I didn't know if staff had any update on that from what we heard last month.
So, as discussed in the last meeting, I said that I would work with accountability to provide you a history of testing over the last 3 years. That has been done, and unfortunately, it was not just this year, but it was, a year before and another year before that. So you have that information, and that information has also been shared with the school.
So I think given the testing issues, and it's not having, mostly not having all the EC tests.
That's correct.
The EC testing threshold. I need some coffee or something. This morning, I feel like this school would get a 10-year if it was not for that, but I think that is a significant enough compliant issue that a 7-year would be appropriate. So, Mr. Chair, I move that Mountain Island Charter School be recommended to the State Board for a 7-year renewal.
I second that.
All right, properly moved and second. Any discussion? I would add that I don't want to, kind of going back to what I mentioned in the actual renewal interview. I don't know if I think the compliance is, I guess we would say this is a significant compliance issue, but to me, it's more about that there's a pattern of non-compliance, and that touches on a couple areas. It's testing. I believe the other issue was around admissions and lottery. Obviously, it's been in dispute, and they disputed it, but the data that we have supports what was represented to us from the Office of Charter Schools. And what I see is a pattern where we've kind of seen something a few years now. And so I think that that's why I'll be supporting the motion for 7. Again, I think there's so many things for schools to manage that I just want to make clear that, if you make a mistake and you correct the mistake, that's not going to keep you from a 10-year charter. But if you are making the same mistake multiple times or making multiple mistakes and to where it's a pattern, just as you certainly experience sometimes with employees, that then it becomes a problem.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, does that mean that the noncompliance has been corrected?
I think there are
Addressed.
pieces
We
of
won't know
non-compliance.
till next year.
Yeah, and can you
Yeah.
put your mic?
You can't fix it after the fact. You
Right,
can't
the
fix this
testing.
year's after
Yeah,
the
yeah, you
fact.
can.
Yeah, so we won't know till after they do testing this school year whether they have corrected and they're actually testing all the students they're supposed to.
What about the lottery piece? Have there been corrective actions for,
I think from what they understood to us, everybody felt pretty comfortable with that.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? All right, so, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, Charlotte Lab School, this school has had a few issues with finances over the last few years, but they seem to be on the upswing, and so I've kind of gone back and forth on this one, but I think it's either a 7 or a 10, and I'm not, I didn't know what the discussion was, because that seemed to kind of be where we were fluctuating between last time, and I didn't know if anybody had thoughts on that before I made a
that was a-
motion.
5 and
Was
7?
it a 5 and a 7 we were moving?
Yeah, 5 and 7.
Well, then, in that case, then, I move that Charlotte Lab School be recommended for a 7-year renewal.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded.
So question,
Yes, go ahead, Joel.
why 7 instead of the recommended 5?
Because they have, if you look at their financials are really the reason that they wouldn't be getting a 10. And if you look at their financials, they've been making very good progress over the last couple of years of getting out of the hole that they were in.
Yeah, I'm looking at the financials and I'm trying to quantify can staff help me out with the finances as it relates to this trend or this increase? Because I'm not seeing it.
And somebody from FBS is here, and I think they can explain. It's live.
This is Leanne Carr. I'm the Assistant Director of School Business. And so with Charlotte Lab, what we had seen was in their 2018 audit, They had shown significant signs of insolvency. I'm reading from the same memo that you all received, so if there's something specific, feel free to ask. I'm not sure that I'll be able to answer right off the cuff, but I can certainly look into it. But they met several of the criteria to be concerned. There was the main one being that there was unassigned governmental fund balance deficit of around $350,000. There was a deficit in the general fund balance of around $293,000. Expenditures exceeded revenues by $333,000. And there were multiple short-term operating loans, and I believe they might have been, I'm not gonna say, I don't know if it was related party, but it was multiple short-term operating loans. We did receive the 2019 audit in a timely manner. That audit showed that the unassigned governmental fund balance had increased around $450,000 to a positive 111. The general fund balance was around $235,000, which was an even greater increase of around $528,000 from the previous year. Revenues this year exceeded expenditures by $479,000. And the audit reported that they had repaid previous year short-term loans from board members, so it had been some board member loans, in the amount of $250,000. There was no balance on those loans any longer.
And I'll note too, in that same memo from FBS, it said review of the school's 2019 audit showed significant improvement in financial health.
We do. We try to give credit when it shows, and if a school has been on disciplinary for any type of financial reason related to financial insolvency, we don't move, it's just being cautious. We don't move a school from disciplinary off. We go to cautionary because it doesn't have any impact on the finances or any kind of installment arrangement. And then the following year, if we see continued positive trending, we remove them entirely.
So Leanne, this year they're on cautionary.
Yes. That is what, yes, when we reviewed the 19 audit and it looked like the issues had been resolved, we put them on cautionary and we'll evaluate again next year.
So even if we give them the 7-year renewal, you will be watching them very closely.
Well, yes, they'll remain. We have a tracking system, so those are our renewals, and any school on any type of noncompliance that's financial are our first priority. We make sure that we review those audits as soon as we can.
And just to add to the school's performance, academically, the school is doing well. Operationally, the school is also doing well. So in consideration, that was one of your conversation pieces as far as the toss between 5-year and the 7-year, because they are academically performing.
Yeah, I believe that out of the last 4 years, that last year was the first year they met growth.
I mean, if I remember that, their numbers were trending in the right direction. They had a bunch of, they had received a CSP grant, and they, part of this was just in the discussion. It was the kind of management of cash flow in the first 5 years to kind of get the school to a stable place. But I really have no concerns about certainly their ability to attract students. Their, I think it sounds like their academic programs, all the trend lines are going in the right direction. And I don't know, I certainly remember this application, the school leader who's still the school leader, which is one of the most important things. If you have the founding school leader that stays for that long, she's exceptionally strong. Those of you that were not here, this is one of the best applications that we've seen. Kind of, I don't know. I don't have major concerns at all about this, giving them a longer runway to really stabilize. I have a feeling they'll come back and they will not be discussed at all, because they'll get a 10-year and 7 years from now. So
I just want to reiterate, they did get a CSP grant, right?
They got a CSP grant directly from federal government, not a sub-grant. They didn't get a sub-grant from us.
Oh, okay, they did get one from the federal government.
yeah,
from
because
the
they
feds,
were
yeah.
way ahead of that cycle.
Cycle, okay.
They were one of the very first schools to institute a weighted lottery also.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm definitely in favor of 7-year on this one. All right. Motion's on the table, right? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We had a second. I'm trying to remember who'd seconded it.
That was me.
It was you. It was Cheryl.
Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, the next one is Kestrel Heights. Really, the only issue that Kestrel Heights has had is had to do with ADM, and I think we can all remember the reasons behind why they have the ADM issue. I think this is a real success story, and I think you're recused in this one, right, Mr. Chair? I think this is a real success story of a school and how they have overcome what they went through, which was, of course, of their own doing, but they got I think I've heard it described as a healthy but fair penalty, and they have really came through and are doing well. And so I would move we recommend to the state board that Kestrel Heights receive a 10-year renewal.
10-year?
Yes.
Okay. I second it, if nobody else did.
I did.
Okay, Bruce did.
Do we have any discussion, debate on that motion?
That's, yeah,
So wasn't it recommended by Austin Charter Schools at 5 years?
yes.
It's actually recommended at 3. No, that was the
No,
current, that was
they
the
did,
current.
they
that was the
recommended a 5-year,
current. Yeah.
yeah.
I think other than the ADM issue, I think they would qualify statutorily for a 10-year, looking at their data.
Yeah, because they're testing and it did outperform.
They outperform the LEA in, they've met growth 2 of the last 3 years, 4 of the last 5, they've met. I just, other than an ADM issue, which they're fine financially, other than the ADM issue, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't.
I think
We
during
move
your
forward with 10.
discussion, one of the topics that came up was they had one other compliance issue, which was IDEA. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Tracy is working on that or has been working on that. And I think that Joe made a soft recommendation of 7 at the time due to the fact that they were coming off of a 3-year. So just a reminder of your conversation, just to help out with discussion.
Has the idea issue been,
Dr. Tracy is
Clarified.
here in the back, so if he would like to speak on his own behalf, that would be, if that's allowed.
Sure, come on up.
Let me say, the memo we got from Business Finance, said the fiscal year, 2019 financial statements were received, reviewed, and there were no financial concerns. And that is with a lower ADM.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks again for allowing me to speak. Yes, we have addressed those issues. The 2019 IDA, we are at 100% with the issue we had, and we've also made some staffing and procedural changes to address any concerns moving forward.
Any further discussion? All right, the motion is for a 10-year renewal.
Sir?
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? 2 opposed? All right, Mr. Ford, I didn't get a vote.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So the motion carries. So we recommending a 10-year renewal for Kestrel Heights. All right, Mr. Chair, the next is Piedmont Classical High. Here they have had 2 out of the last 3 years have been comparable here. They haven't met or exceeded growth all 3 of those years, but they didn't last year, but they had the 2 years before. They did have some governance warning, but that was just from a beginning teacher compliance issue, which we haven't seen to be significant by anybody. My only kind of concern with this school of doing a 7-year renewal is how much the scores dropped last year. In 17-18, their grade level proficiency was 51.3, and it was 38.9 last year, which was quite a drop from a high mark in 16-17 of 63%. And so I just have some concerns of doing too large of a renewal, and I think a 5-year would probably be more appropriate.
Also, they've changed leaders a lot. I'd like to
They've
see
had
some
5 leaders in
stability.
5
5
years.
leaders in 5 years, I'd like to see some stability.
And their graduation rate's like 60-some%.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend the State Board a 5-year renewal for Piedmont Classical.
I'll second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the matter? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is preeminent charter, and again, I think this is another somewhat of a success story. They're definitely trending up. I don't think they're trending quite up to a 10-year yet, but they're getting there. And so I would move that preeminent charter be recommended for a 7-year renewal.
I second that.
All right, any discussion on that?
I just want to say the trend lines are going in the right direction on all aspects of that, especially the academic performance.
They're working
Exceeded
super
every
hard.
year, so that's great.
Did they exceed,
Past 2 years.
The
but they
past 2
haven't
years.
exceeded 3 years in a row?
No,
Right.
but the last 2 years and
They've
growth
exceeded 3
index
out
was
of 5.
8.41.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
Big.
They're working
awesome.
really hard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's like one of the highest, isn't it?
Yeah. They,
And didn't we discuss that they're strong financially as well?
Well, they're
they're
NHA.
NHA.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the only thing that held me back from a 10 is just that they're still about 11% on grade level proficiency behind the LEA. You know, if that was a 6 or a 7 and they were exceeding growth, or a, you know, even getting close to a 5 last year, 5 points off, I would say, yeah, for a 10. But still, I mean, the proficiency score is going up, but I think 7-year is fair.
and with that, I'd like to add that if you look at the other chart that was presented by them, their proficiency rate is higher than schools close to them, not as high as the LEA. So I agree with Stephen that a 7-year would be good.
And I think they're coming off of 2 3s, I think.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think they're gonna be pretty happy with a 7. It's just my thought.
Have they corrected their IDEA matters?
They have. The school has worked diligently to get things done, so.
That's a 7-year.
All right, any more discussion? Did we have a motion?
Yeah. In a second. Had 2 seconds.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries.
The next is Queen City STEM, and if I remember correctly, we were still waiting on the audit.
Yes.
Do we have the audit?
We do have the audit, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to alternate between my computer and the information on my phone. We did receive the audit, and the financial concerns are resolved as far as review of the audit, confirm continued positive trending. And I believe that we have already issued the removal from noncompliance cautionary.
I'd had in my notes that we were talking about a 5 if the audit wasn't clean, a 7 if the audit was clean. So, Mr. Chair, I move that Queen City STEM be recommended for a 7-year renewal.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, motion carries. Oh, no, sorry.
We didn't vote.
Any vote? Unanimous consent.
We're rolling.
Maybe we can do the 10 years in unanimous consent. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries.
The
I would
next
suggest,
is,
however, that they do their observations.
Yes, please.
the next is Shining Rock Classical, CFA. This school had a couple issues with IDEA and public meeting laws. I think in their interview, they did a lot to give us some comfort on that. I believe a 5-year would be appropriate for this school. So I would, a 7?
We were looking at 7
Yeah,
after the
7.
meeting.
Looking at 7 after the
7 years.
meeting? I didn't write that down, but I'll go with 7. Mr. Chair, I move that Shining Rock Classical CFA be recommended for a 7-year renewal.
Second.
Oh, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Y'all are just in a good Christmas mood.
Not the change.
Youngsville Academy in Franklin County. Has been comparable for 2 of the last 3 years and met growth for 2 of the last 3 years. Still, they didn't meet the 10-year renewal threshold under the statute, but otherwise doing fairly well. I would move that we recommend Youngsville Academy for a 7-year renewal.
So one update to Youngsville Academy. They had, their BT compliance was one of their issues, or their compliance issue. They've since turned in a very comprehensive plan, and after speaking with the coordinator, she's cleared them of any noncompliance. Just for your information.
Okay, and the web language has been corrected to align with public.
That was an immediate correction. They
Yeah,
took
that
it down the
was-
next day.
Okay, great.
That,
Seven
they
years.
did that before, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I second your motion.
All right. Any discussion on the motion?
So I'm just curious, what keeps them from a 10-year then, if there
Their
were no
data.
issues? It's just the data?
They've only been comparable 2 out of 3 years instead of 3 out of 3. If they were up for renewal next year, they might have got a
Right.
10. But that just, it is what it is.
Your 2016-17 data is low.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, their data's not, it's not particularly impressive.
No, it's not
Given
good.
their student,
Your ED, they're lower than the county on ED.
and with the majority of the students that attend their school, they're not doing better. They're actually doing worse than the state and the county.
Yeah, I think they fall pretty clearly in the rubric for a 7-year. Being 2 out of 3 met, 2 out of 3 comparable.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I believe you're recused for Kip Durham.
I'm also recused for Kip Durham.
Okay, so we have 2 recusals for Kip Durham. Anybody else recused? All right. We were waiting on an audit. Do we have an audit for Kip Durham?
We did receive the audit, and the around $12,000 deficit was resolved. And so we have, determined that as far as financial or school business is concerned, we don't have any concerns about them financially.
Okay, so the audit was clean, we would
Well,
say?
they had a finding, yes.
So what was the finding on the audit?
Said that. It was actually, this is a little unusual, this is one of the schools that their audit is now being reported in a new way as a result of changes in GASB. So Kip Durham, Kip Gaston, and Kip Halifax are also presented, they're all presented under the umbrella of Eastern NC, Kip Eastern NC Public Schools. So actually, the finding is really more for the oversight entity, the charter holder, and I believe it was an adjustment, and I can look at that, but it was not specifically to Kip Durham.
So, because it's one board with 3 charters, right?
It is.
So, and so it's an audit per board,
Well, it is
right?
one,
But it has all 3 schools included in that one audit.
yes, we
Okay.
worked with LGC, so it's the component audit up front, and then they break out the individual schools for the financial information we need. So Kip Durham as a school looks fine. There was a finding in the audit, but it did not apply to that school specifically.
Thank you. I kind of feel that this is with the audit being okay, it's either a 5 or a 7. They did exceed growth the last two out of the last 3 years.
They moved off of low performing status.
They did. I mean, I think I think a 7 would probably be appropriate. Unless anybody's,
I second that.
all right, well then I will move that Kip Durham be recommended for a 7-year renewal. Seconded by Linda Lynn. 3 second. Say second again, just to make it.
I
all
second it.
happy. All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or debate? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries with Ms. Turner and Mr. Quigley recused. Pave Southeast, you can recuse from that too. All right. The chair is also recused from Pave Southeast Raleigh. After leaving this, I feel good for a 5-year for this one. They really only have data for 2 years. They met both years, met growth both years. The government's warning they had was a BT compliance issue. I think especially with the population that the school's serving, I think 5 years would be good to let them continue to get their feet underneath them. So I would move that Pave Southeast Raleigh be recommended for a 5-year renewal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next is Rocky Mount Prep. Still having some issues with this school. I don't think it's a non-renewal, but they really need to perform better. I would move, Mr. Chair, that Rocky Mount Prep receive a 3-year recommendation.
I second that.
How many 3 years have they received?
This is their third
Coming off
year.
Third one, I think.
Third one. But they've had change in leadership, a lot of change in leadership.
The last renewal, they were on the cusp of a change of principal.
Uh-huh.
And now at this renewal,
Same
they've
thing.
taken on a new principal with a new strategy. So their numbers falling was intentional because they are building the culture. So they reduced the number of students that they were letting in for this year.
They stopped,
Seniors
Sixth
and
grade.
juniors for incoming as new for this year. So that was the fall in the ADM. And they didn't really have any other issues on the table other than everyone seemed to have their BT program issue, which proud of these schools for going in and they've taken that by the horns and made corrections across the board. So,
We should not even talk about BT. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
Like, it should not be part of the discussion. It is impossible to not have a finding. Like, it is the most ridiculous thing.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that the person Rhonda that we work with is great. Like the team, they
It's
come
just a
in, they
lot.
tell you fix this, fix. Like, I'm not speaking. I just feel like as a compliance issue. Also, the changes to licensure that have been put in place related to the EPPs and the residency. This is so ridiculous and complicated that it just makes all this stuff really hard. And I've had people within DPI give me wrong information based on state board policy. So it's like nearly impossible to remain in compliance on this. I just like don't even want it to. And I'm not saying that because I don't think we have a non-compliance at Healthy Start. I'm not trying to absolve
You're
myself.
going to after that, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure we will. I just feel like the people who work on BT are great. Like they provide, but it's almost like
It's a lot.
What I worry about is that you have a system that's designed to find compliance issues. That's like they come in, they say like, here, you're not doing these things. And then we report that as a finding, and so I worry that it's like that, and then it then creates that situation where schools are not, we want schools to seek out help, but then schools are like, well, I'm not gonna call and tell them and ask them a question because then I'll have a finding, So I just
The whole thing changed. So people who had existing BT plans that were compliant, all the rules changed.
Right.
And so then you were out of compliance. This is just not the year to care about it.
Right. Yeah. I feel like, bringing it up, you know, it's it just raises a lot of questions about, because I think we just need to be careful about when we say there's a compliance issue or there's a finding. I really want that to be actually something that when we put, I feel like on some level it delegitimizes the other more serious compliance issues when you're talking about something like BT, you know, to Cheryl's point, that's changed so much, it's nearly impossible to not have,
And
if you're
any-
gonna do the program, if you know, and again, and then you're kind of like penalizing schools for having new teachers that they're trying to train. It's like, you know, what's my incentive to hire and train new teachers? Anyways, okay.
That has been
Soapbox.
feedback
Oh,
in the field, but one thing, anytime something comes up, even if it's BT, schools are given that opportunity and say, hey, this has come up. So before ever coming to the microphone to say, this is it, they're at least aware so that they can start working on it. And our schools do a really good job of being responsive once we ask them. So kudos and thumbs up to them for getting it done.
The one thing I will say about Rocky Mount, to their benefit, they have 77% of their population is economically disadvantaged, so we know that number's probably low, just based off of the statistics that we've looked at, and they're performing comparably to the LEA among that population. I still think they've got to show some growth. They need to be exceeding growth for a
This
few
school has
years.
been open since charter started.
1997.
And
it's huge.
So when you're low performing, continually low performing, and you've been open 20+ years, that's scary.
I mean, I really feel like this is probably like the last 3 year that Rocky Mount's gonna be able to get. They're gonna have to step it up.
I think they have the right leader. I have a lot of confidence in Dr. Garrett, and you know, she's an instructional person. So I mean, at the end of the day, they're, you know, financially they have
Gobs of money.
just sitting on a
Lots of money.
massive cash balance, like financially. So I mean, the thing that they need to work on is the academics, because they've basically been at the same performance proficiency for 5 years, right? 34.7, 36.2, 37, 34.7, 31. I mean, they're just stuck there. And so at the end of the day, that's about instruction and what's happening in the classroom, and putting the chief academic officer in the driver's seat as the ED, I think, is the right move. So hopefully she'll take the 3 year and really use it to galvanize the staff to get the academic performance that they need. All right, do we have a motion?
Yeah.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Ashley, what did we end up on Kip Durham? I did not write it down, and I know I made the motion.
Seven.
Seven?
Seven.
That's what I thought. Just good to have all these. I've had to bring these sheets out at depositions before.
I'm sure you did.
Next, it was a really long deposition too. It was like, it felt like 25 hours. But anyway, Veritas Community School, CFA, the school is low performing, but not continually low performing, has met growth every year that we have the data. I will, at the chair's request, not mention what their area of noncompliance is in.
All right.
So I would move for a recommendation of a 5-year renewal for Veritas Community School.
Second.
All right.
Do we have an update on their ADM? They were flagged by FBS for a 3-year declining ADM.
I have 124.
What was the 19 this
That-
year?
That information remains consistent. There's not been a major influx of enrollment since. So they're still in that same
150?
space. It was 120.
124 is what they
24.
self-reported. Yeah.
Okay,
I-
I think
154.
they've made enough changes to their budget.
I will say that the although the topic of their compliance is BT, the fact that they just refused it, that's
Right.
another level.
That's
I
another
mean, that's not
level.
what we're saying to do.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that
You
mean?
refuse?
No, I mean,
I
you,
didn't-
every,
I
sure,
didn't
you
know it was
want it,
optional.
you know.
It's really not, but the person went out to actually do the eval and to
Yeah,
work with
that's
them, and
not an
they
option.
refused to do it. So
I-
that's
Yeah,
why we should-
that's not
something-
okay.
No,
They've,
that's
they've
not.
done it now though, right?
So now leadership is in place, is actually working with with the BT program to make sure everything is getting done. But that did actually happen.
So it's
And
kind
they
of like
Get to
discussed
opt
it. We
out.
discussed it.
Stand.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you,
yeah.
that's
You
That's
can't.
not an option.
not an option. Just not an option.
I think
No,
we
we
should,
just won't.
I think we should stick with the 3 year.
What, aren't
It really
we
happened.
really, you know, isn't the declining enrollment like a very real issue at this school? Like,
Yes.
we were concerned that they were even.
Right.
They went from
this year.
168 to 150 to now to
Then
125.
124.
Mr. Chair, I'll
I think
withdraw my
3.
previous motion, make a new motion that Veritas receive a 3-year renewal.
I'll
I
second that.
All right, any discussion on the new motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, the next is Wilmington Prep. They are trending up in their growth score. They're still lagging behind the LEA a good bit. They haven't been comparable any of the last 3 years. They do have 83% economically disadvantaged, and they are comparable in that. They don't have governance financial warnings. They're otherwise in compliance with the terms of their charter. I would be comfortable with a 5-year renewal for Wilmington Prep.
I'll second that.
So I will move for a 5-year recommendation for Wilmington Prep.
All right, any discussion?
Did we get their audit for 2019? Did we have it?
Do we have the Wilmington Prep audit?
You did.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Pretty sure theirs was already in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I,
was.
I think it was already clear.
Theirs was in,
they're
they just
clear.
have a low fund balance because they're a very tiny school.
They're small.
Right, there's three, but we, have them, that we reviewed their financial statements for the current, for 2019, and have had financial concerns at this time.
And we said 5 years, right?
5 years.
Okay.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Or further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I believe,
And then
I
there
believe
was
this is our last one, Ignite Innovation PIT, and I believe we have, you're recused.
I need, Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself on this one as well.
The grade level proficiency of this school, the 3 years that they have data, has been 25.4, 23.9, 20.4. They're 37% in grade level proficiency behind the LEA. They have been an F all 3 years that they have data. They have not net growth any of those 3 years. Their enrollment dropped from 235 to 195, and I believe dropped further this year. I just don't see that this school's going to make it. Among economically disadvantaged students, they're 31 points behind the LEA. I think it was a decent idea when we approved this application, and I think the execution hasn't been great, and I think that's to put it nicely.
One of the things when we approved this was they were partnering with ECU, and that evidently didn't happen.
They have the lab school now out there too. ECU does.
And then, but besides that, they have some financial warnings. I have that they're non-compliant in dozens of areas across the board. And I think it was a good try, but Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend that Ignite Innovation PIT be non-renewed.
I second that.
All right, any discussion?
What is the current ADM just in terms of displacement issues? Is it 171? Okay.
In my opinion, I just, if this isn't a non-renewal, I don't know what is. So, you know, and this is one of the reasons that we don't give 10-year charters anymore
In
to
the
new
beginning.
schools, because it allows us to, give a school an opportunity to do something innovative. If it doesn't work, we can close it. And, that's part of the, I think the mindset and the agreement behind charter schools, and one reason we don't cement schools that are low performing over long term, or certainly try to avoid that as much as possible.
And I think as we get ready to take this vote, that people in the public that might be listening, that are told over and over and over again that charter schools have no accountability. This is ultimate accountability. If you do not perform, you do not continue as a school. And you trade there's a difference between regulation and accountability. Regulation a lot of times stifles innovation, but we, as charter schools trade that regulation, less regulation in for a much higher accountability, to the point where you don't operate anymore if you can't get the job done. And unfortunately, Ignite Innovation Pit has not been able to get the job done.
Well, and to add to that, traditional schools don't ever have to come before their board or the state board and argue for, I guess with the exception of some of the schools identified in the only school identified as the final one in the ISD, look at what happened. You had a number of schools that were identified that showed significant performance after they were, targeted for the ISD. So, when there is real accountability that you might lose your school, it's quite motivating. And I think that when you, just like in charter world, when you receive a 3-year charter, it's motivating. When the possibility that you could lose your school is there, it's motivating. And I think, that's part of the, one of the positives of even district schools knowing that their school is on the line. And I don't think they don't have that accountability enough. So I appreciate this process as an important part of making schools better.
I learned a quote from Stephen Walker a few years back, and I've used it several times and have given you credit, as I am doing today.
I hope it's a good one.
It's without consequences, there is no incentive to change. And that goes for working with your children, your own children or grandchildren, or with schools. Human behavior.
That's a good point. Pretty sure my wife told me that this morning about
You went through
how
it,
to discipline my 15-year-old. Okay. All right. So at this point, we're going to take a vote. So unfortunately, we will, but fortunately, in the sense that accountability, demonstrating that accountability is real, and certainly demonstrate that to the State Board of Ed, that we take this really seriously. So the recommendation is for a non-renewal of Ignite Innovation Academy. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, we have moved through this quite quickly. Is Revolution Academy Bunker Hill here, or representatives? I see some Oak Grove folks, too. Okay. So maybe we could get started on that a little bit earlier. Looking at the agenda, is Movement East going to want to talk about their amendment? Do you know if they're coming tomorrow, Ms. Beccaro?
I would prefer not to go there today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We could touch on the State Board of Ed updates. If Dave's ready to do that and kind of knock that out of the way for tomorrow, and then talk about the next meeting, if all are in favor of that slight adjustment, and then we'll take a nice break and try to pick up. Why don't we say we try to pick up the introduction at 10:20 or 10. I don't assuming Revolution is here, we can kind of play it by ear. Do you have a sense of when your team will be here? Okay, great. So why don't we say we'll start, Dr. Williams can start her presentation at 10:15, and then we can kick off the interview at 10:30. Dave, do you want to give state board updates?
Did these change from?
And for the record, please notice that we've, all are in favor of the amendment to the agenda, that we will discuss the state board updates today at this time, and through unanimous consent, and saving us some time at the end of the day tomorrow, hopefully.
Before I start with my updates, I want to take this opportunity to thank Shonda and her team for doing a great job on renewal, the visits, the data that you've given, and the discussions that this board had. Thank you very much for that. As far as State Board of Ed updates, at their last meeting, they did approve Davis Charter Academy for an accelerated application. That was the only one out of the 5 that presented, so they did take your recommendation for, to approve Davis Charter Academy in Chadburn. They approved Rocky Mountain Prep's request to amend its mission statement. Actually, they never had a mission statement, because when they were approved, you didn't have to have a mission statement, so they were, during their strategic planning, and I think this is an indication that they really are on the right track, but they have a mission statement. They approved Bonnie Cone Classical Academy's request for a weighted lottery and to change management companies. As you know, they were with Team CFA, now they're with Charter One. They approved Movements East Charter Schools' request to modify and lower their enrollment. Community Public Charter Schools' request to have a weighted lottery. And Robert J. Brown Leadership Academy's request to relinquish their charter. As far as OCS updates, our office has made visits to Aristotle Prep, Movement Charter, Tillery Charter, and Bonnie Cone.
What was Tillery's attendance like?
Dr. Williams went to that, did that as a visit, as all new schools that open up. Dr. Williams tries to visit those schools. Dr. Williams, can I put you on the spot?
Tillery has about 65 students.
I would say that our, and we have communicated this to them, our concern with Tillery right now is they need to get a robust marketing plan for new students, and I think that was shared with them on Dr. Williams' report. And then NC Access, Jay, would you like to put you on the spot for any updates on that? We did have a roundtable discussion at Community School Davidson. This was an invitation only for schools that do qualify for the grant, trying to talk to them about any of their, about the application process, any of the concerns they might have. Also did a training at Sugar Creek. We appreciate that, them hosting that, and their last fellows program at Research Triangle Park.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. The application window is open. We received 1 letter of intent so far. The deadline is January 15th, so there's still plenty of time for that. And then we have another expansion roundtable, like Dave mentioned, next week. And then we have an application training later this week as well. And then another application training scheduled in
What's the
January.
expansion roundtable?
So we've invited schools who would qualify for expansion to answer a little more in-depth, like what that could look like, and talk specifically through some of the conversations that this board has had around capacity issues and what expansion means for those schools. We've invited some of the schools who would qualify for expansion to come join us and talk through some of the specifics of the Access program and how it can support their schools.
And, I'm sorry, when was that? Is that this week?
Next week, this
Week from Thursday at High Point University. You should have been invited to the one at Community School Davidson.
we can make sure of that.
But don't take that as we don't want Sugar Creek to apply.
That's at High Point University, you said?
Excuse me?
High Point University next
Yes,
week.
a week from Thursday. And that is an invitation only to schools. CSAP members are always invited to anything we do, but
Right.
the trainings are for anybody that wants to attend. And you want to talk about inviting low-performing schools to the fellows program?
Yes, so we launched our Visiting Fellows program this past fellowship session in November. So we invited 6 leaders from schools that do not qualify for Access subgrants to join us for the remainder of the year this year, and then we'll launch a sort of full cohort next year of 10 leaders per year from low-performing schools or schools that don't qualify for subgrants to go through the year-long fellowship with us. So I think that was a great addition to our group. So now we're up to about 24 fellows for the first year, but those 6 were a great addition to our group and added a lot of value to the conversation. So really excited about that moving forward.
All right.
Great time.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so we will conclude after uproar at 2:30 tomorrow, hopefully. And at this time, we'll take it looks like Revolution is here. We'll take a break until 10:15.
Twice as, hey Rita, how are you? Twice as important. You done 4 before? Really informed on the first one and pretty decent on the second, and the third one, I like skimmed it. I mean, after a while, I just couldn't look. These two are basically the same. They're just in a different area. So if you dug into this one, you know exactly. I did. That's exactly the same, except it's just a different area. Davidson. I know Guilford. I go to, you know, it's our neighboring county. I do not know anyone involved. Bruce? Oh, it's bumping.
People that have had attacks.
All right. Dr. Williams.
All right, good morning, members of the board. Today I'm going to provide your monthly application update. Specifically, we will cover the application timeline and process briefly, and the applicants who will come before you for full interviews this month. Near the end of your meeting in November, you were provided with a schedule of interviewees for December and January. You will interview 3 applicant groups today, 3 applicant groups tomorrow, and the final 3 applicant groups in January. We will end this update with any closing questions or remarks that you may have at that time. As you know, we follow an approved timeline and process, which this board recommended to the State Board of Education. Because of time constraints, I won't go into detail on this slide unless anyone needs a refresher. Okay. So, if we take a step back to look at the application cycle status to date, 19 groups submitted applications. Of those 19, there was 1 fast-track replication and 4 accelerated applicants. 2 acceleration applicants were approved by this group, but ultimately one of those 2 was denied. And as you heard Dave mention this morning, the State Board has now accepted your recommendation to move forward with Davis Academy Chadbourne. There were 14 regular timeline groups that appeared before you for clarification interviews, and you forwarded 9 of those 14 to a full interview. 3 of the regular timeline groups are appearing for a full interview today. So this brings us to those full interviews and a review of that process. I will present a 2-minute overview of information of each application to you. The interview lead will then give the instruction to the applicant groups to introduce themselves using the following guidelines in a 3-minute time frame. All members associated with the proposed school should line up at the podium and introduce themselves in this order. First, the board members, we're asking for a name, occupation, and role they will play at the school if approved. Second, we're asking for third-party vendors to introduce themselves using the same format. All parties present should then be directed to have a seat in the designated area and remain silent until addressed by the board. Anyone speaking must be at the podium and speak into the microphone. No additional material will be passed out at the interview if not already provided in the online application system. And anything that was provided has now been posted on eBoard for your review or sent to you in email. Following the introductions, you all will conduct the interview and make a recommendation to the State Board at the conclusion of the interview. The entire session is expected to last about an hour. Each interview is conducted by the full CSAB and led by a member of the CSAB leadership. Your discussion of the application and comments from the external evaluators will occur first for about 20 minutes, and then normally you would ask questions of the parties present for about another 20 minutes, and then follow those questions by deliberations for about 10 minutes, and end for about 5 minutes deliberating about your recommendation to the State Board. I will provide written notification of the recommendation and next steps to the applicant groups via the online application system. 6 schools were notified to appear for their full interview either today or tomorrow on November 18th. After the clarification interviews, our office released those clarification interview minutes to those 6 applicant groups. Any written responses submitted by the applicants have been forwarded to this board as well as uploaded to eBoard for your review and consideration. Any letters regarding absent board members have also been placed on eBoard for your review. Today's interviewees are Revolution Academy, Bunker Hill, Oak Grove Charter Academy, and City Charter Academy.
Do you know, can you tell us who is leading tomorrow's interviews as well?
Sure.
If you've got it off the top of your head.
Yes, and it's right here as well. Tomorrow, Mr. Walker, you're leading Carolina Royal and Clara Science, and Mr. Quigley, Teller Institute.
Got it.
Why does Linda Lynn get tomorrow off?
Only
Those weren't
because
her
I'm just kidding.
we have the same
'Cause it's
leadership that
Christmas.
led, member of leadership that led the clarification interview is leading the full interview. Any other questions? All right, then we will get started.
Can I ask you a question about the map, Dr. Williams?
Sure.
What's the difference in the color of the pins?
That's an excellent question.
Is it just because it's in the shaded area?
That's possible.
No, because some of these
Unfortunately, I
overlap.
don't know the
yeah.
answer to that question.
I was trying to determine if that indicated charter
That's
versus,
what I wondered.
but the numbers don't match up.
Yeah, the numbers don't match up on that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Reeves, I don't know the answer to that question. Mr. Quigley, would you like for me to go ahead and begin with
Yep,
the
we're ready.
introduction?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first interviewee this morning is Revolution Academy Bunker Hill. They are proposing to locate in Guilford County. Their proposed enrollment in year 1, grades K through 6, 309 students. Year 2, grades K through 7, 565 students. Year 3, grades K through 8, 727 students. And that is their maximum capacity, proposed capacity. An LEA impact statement was not provided, but due diligence has been provided to this board for the proposed management organization. No special requests have been made of this applicant group, and it is not a repeat applicant. They are planning to partner with Charter Development Solutions, but no fee was provided. The application was deemed complete.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll have the board come, introduce themselves, please.
Hey everyone, it's good to be with you today. My name is Alexandra Valenson. I am a local of Brown Summit, North Carolina. I have a master's in counseling and theology, and I've spent the last 10 years working in youth ministry and also working with women in Guilford County. I've oversaw curriculum development within youth in my church and various nonprofit organizations, and I've also led a group of about 90 to 100 women in leadership development.
Thank you guys for this opportunity. My name is Derek Hawkins. I am the pastor, also vice chairman of Revolution Academy Bunker Hill. I'm also a local pastor in the community of Guilford County, a church by the name of the Refuge Church in Greensboro. We've worked tirelessly in the community for development, low-income housing, and also community involvement for financial literacy in eastern Greensboro.
Good morning, I'm John O'Day. By day, I'm a consultant in the healthcare industry, and I also serve on the town council in Summerfield, North Carolina, and Guilford County. I'm the treasurer of the board. I also have a 10-year-old who attends a charter school, and I've watched her flourish in her education since she was 5, and I want to help other kids to flourish just like she has. So I'm really happy and proud to be part of a solution in Northeast Guilford County.
Good morning. My name is Dr. David Honeycutt. I am a career educator. I started my education career in Davidson County as a teacher, then moved to Greensboro City as a teacher and administrator at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. I retired after 32 years, joined a educational software company for the next 15 years. and that educational company took me literally around the world in doing training and working with school boards, school leaders, and teachers, and training them in assessment as well as in other software that the company provided. I retired from them after 15 years and have been retired ever since. And that was in 2011. I live in Guilford County in the Brown Summit area, and my responsibility will be helping oversight of the educational and curriculum programs.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Kreider. I'm an attorney in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've practiced law in the Piedmont Triad since 2008. Graduated from Wake Forest School of Law. And I have got my own practice in Greensboro. I actually had my own practice right about where the proposed school location is going to be in East Greensboro and the cusp of Brown Summit. Practiced law there for a couple years as well. Most recently, I started my own practice this spring. Formerly, I was a district court judge appointed to the bench in Guilford County in 2015 through 2018. I live in Greensboro with my wife, Catherine, and my two twin sons who were born 3 weeks ago today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm Victor Jones. I'm actually from Raleigh. I left here to go to Parris Island, served 13 years in the Marines, and I finished up at UNCG with a degree in finance, insurance, and real estate. I've owned about a dozen companies, including 3 here in Raleigh. Got 6 in the Triad now. Employ over 200 people. I'm the walking Excel spreadsheet, so they brought me in here to crunch numbers. And I'm also serving in my second term High Point City Council, so multifaceted and looking forward to helping with this opportunity.
Dr. Randy Shaver. I am the Director of School Development for Charter Development Solutions. I have a total of 41 years of experience as an educator and then lots more as a student in the public schools in North Carolina. Most recently, I supervised all of the operations in Guilford County schools, school system of 73,000 students, and also directly supervised the northern half of that county, all of the schools in the northern half, so I'm very familiar with this region.
Good morning, I'm Carla Hall. I am a founding member of the Board of Directors of Cornerstone Charter Academy, a Team CFA school. I served on the board from 2011 to 2019 and for 5 years as the board president. My experience on the board led to working with other charter schools to help improve and revitalize and develop charter schools. So I'm now a member of Charter Development Solutions. My experience and background will primarily serve in the areas of governance, oversight, and accountability. And I thank you for having us here today.
Morning, Scott Conklin with Charter Development Solutions. I'm on the board of Charter Development Solutions and also served on the board of Cornerstone Charter Academy, Team CFA School in the roles of vice president and treasurer, and also chaired the facilities committee and finance committee and personnel committees at various times when we were moving from our temporary location to permanent location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'd like to do, board, because this discussion will be the entire board today, is basically go through the components of the application. And the first thing that I'd like to talk about is the proposed management company. If there are any questions regarding that, I'm hoping everyone got the letters from the American Charter Development and First Citizens Bank, since this is the first school they will manage, and it showed us some financial background that they would have some help if they needed to. Is there any other discussion on the proposed management company, since it's the first one?
Yeah, my question's basically, the applicant says that this EMO has a track record of sound fiscal management and oversight, but I understand there's letters of support, but they don't have, they have not overseen
Right.
school before.
There's not any, why don't you address that, why you picked this management company, and what gives you the confidence that you need?
I mean, unless the school is approved, they have no resources, right?
Well, they've got, those letters say that they can bring down the resources if needed.
They have letters of credit.
Letters of credit, that's what
But
it
then
is.
it also says that they're not willing to support the school unless it can pay for stuff.
Yeah, I think that was, and I think maybe, I guess, are we supposed to talk first and then ask them questions?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think that was kind of, my concern at first when I read through it is, we have to kind of drill down on this. I think it's a CMO. Is it a CMO? On this CMO's capacity, which I understand that a lot of the people from Charter Development Solutions are also on the board of Revolution Academy, the original Revolution Academy that just opened. So is, I think, still in year one right now. And so that was kind of my, what's the capacity of the CMO that's there? And I think that's, to me, that's one of the biggest questions is, does that CMO have the capacity to be able to do what they're promising?
Right, so we may want to have someone from the CMO answer that.
And I think it should be noted, ACD is also a facilities group. They provide facilities. So if you're going to shake hands with them, kind of making a promise to also build a new facility with them.
I think it's I think that's American Charter Development. This one's Charter Development Solutions.
Well, I'm talking about
Yeah, but
the
the-
letter
What's
of
a letter
support.
of support
was
with-
for the
was from
building,
ACD.
and then
So
there's
got
a,
it.
and then
There's
there's a
another-
letter of personal credit for Ms.
75,000.
Sauer for 75,000.
Okay.
So anyway, if you would address that and just the confidence that, I mean, since this is your first one, and maybe even share with us, how did CDS really develop? Because you've opened a school this year.
No, they haven't.
No, it's not open.
No.
They do
It's
not
not
have.
Oh, it opens next year, that's right.
Before we hear from the management company, can we hear from the board chair?
Yes, okay.
Because
This would be the first school that we would.
we'd like to hear from the board chair
Let's hear from
first.
the board chair first then,
Right, right.
okay.
No, we want to hear from her instead
The
of you.
board chair.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey everyone, do you have
Okay. And also the new school is not going to be associated with the
Management
the
company.
management company, is our
No,
understanding.
ma'am. We will be sister schools, so we will share best practices, management, like practices and different personnel, maybe share bus routes and different things like that. But we will not be affiliated other than sister schools. We're not a replication. But to answer your question, the reason we chose CDS is the members of the CDS board have a reputation in Guilford County for opening and operating. So I heard someone say that they haven't operated schools before, but they have been on the chair. Carla has been the chairwoman of the board for Cornerstone for 5 years, so she has managed a charter school. And Mary Catherine has opened Cornerstone, Piedmont Classical. She's also opening Revolution Academy in Summerfield. And so we have great confidence because of their proven track record in Guilford County that they will be able to provide the oversight that we need. They're local, they're a nonprofit. We have personal relationships with them just from people in the county that we know and have given them great recommendations. So I have full confidence in CDS will be able to accomplish what they've stated.
So,
Well, CDS then, this will be the first school and the
Yes.
only school that
Yes,
they will
ma'am.
be managing.
Yes, ma'am. It is the only school. So Mary Catherine she is going to be with Revolution Academy, and CDS is represented behind us.
Okay.
so, wait, I don't understand. This is the only school? Because I thought they were managing Revolution.
No, they're
Yeah.
not.
They are
We are
not.
we are the first school that CDS will be managing.
That's why.
Okay, so here's my question.
Okay.
Because I do feel like the management company piece of this, and this is, part of, I think for us as a board, when we bring in a new management company, this is the opportunity, because once they get established, then it's much easier, for them to continue to open schools, in my opinion. We've seen this with, what's the new one that's opening, Wake
Charter
Prep?
One.
Charter One, right? They've now partnered with Bonnie Cone right? So it's like, so what do you as a board chair, you are going to pay, assuming you get this charter, $2.579 million to Charter Development Solutions over the next 5 years. What are you gonna get for that?
They are going to oversee the day-to-day operations of our school. So they're going to help us with our teachers, they're going to hire principals, they're going to help us as a board lead the school. So we are
Right.
going to be the governing board, but they're going to help us lead the school.
I mean,
Which I think is invaluable, by the way, as a parent. Having someone that has been in charter schools, knows them, understands them. Their schools that they open have a wait list of 1,000 kids. They're doing something right, and we
but the
want
schools
this
that
in
they
our area.
opened were not run by them. They
Yeah.
were just on the board. I mean,
But they essentially, they had to open it. I mean, they had to go in and work with the facilities. I mean, what Mary, Catherine, and Carla did was essentially run a charter school. They had to hire teachers. They had to oversee curriculum.
what were the boards that they were on again? Summerfield,
Cornerstone, and Piedmont.
Cornerstone, and Piedmont.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you just seem like you have a really capable board of directors.
I think we do, yes.
And, you know, again, what are they gonna do for $256,000? I mean, you have $256,000 in year one, but you have 300,000 for lease and mortgage. You know, you're paying, you got a principal, you got a, finance officer. I mean, what are they gonna do? What are we getting for that 250? That's the question your board needs to ask yourself. What are you going to get for that board for that amount of money that you can't get that you can't just do it yourself and get a principal to do it?
I think all of us on the board could say that we have confidence in Charter Development Solution to take the burden off of the board from the day-to-day operations of the school. I have a job, everyone on my board has a job, so we are looking forward to the honor of being a governing board, but CDS will oversee the day-to-day operations of our school.
So,
Go ahead, yes ma'am.
so you said Ms. Sauer is gonna be at Revolution,
Yes,
at which one?
The one that you gave a charter to last year.
The previous one?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Will
She's
the
registered
management
agent,
company
not the
also
executive director of
cover
this.
marketing? 'Cause
Yes, ma'am. The management company will cover marketing.
I mean, okay, so we have marketing and the day-to-day operations, but really your principal is going to run the day-to-day operations.
Let me see if I can clarify just a little bit. The management company will provide marketing. It will provide professional development for the teachers and training of all the staff. It will provide hiring of the staff and oversight of the staff, including evaluation instruments that we're developing now to be used specifically with the school. It will provide transportation and the food services program.
Well, but not, I mean, you'll manage the.
We will
because you
manage it,
could-
that's
yeah, I
correct.
mean, because I think there's management companies, I think, tend to try to take a lack of understanding and overcomplicate things and then say, oh, we're gonna do this for you. I mean, you have $90,000 in the transportation budget.
Yes.
So are people from the management company gonna be driving school buses?
No, we'll hire bus
Okay.
drivers.
I just want to
We're
be clear
actually-
about what where dollars are going to, because when we have some other CMO, you know, in some cases they're giving, you know, are you, NHA is going to build a building for a school, correct? Right? Okay, keep going. What else?
In terms of transportation, that we will contract that out with First Student, and we can share that transportation with the other school as well in order to save costs down the road. We will take away the day-to-day operations of the schools from the board so that they can be freed in their busy lives to do their jobs and serve as a governance body as opposed to an operational
Can you
body.
give an
Are you not
example?
gonna have a principal?
Yes, they will have a principal.
Why won't the principal do the
The
day-to-day
princi-
operation?
The principal will do the day-to-day operations, but we will supervise the principal as the management company.
So who does the principal work for?
Everyone is co-employed by the board and by Charter Development Solutions.
Can you explain how that works? I mean, I think we're typically more accustomed to with a CMO or an EMO, the head of school principal reports to the board or the CMO. But in your case, you're saying all employees have two bosses?
Well, they do, in a way of speaking, yes, because we'll provide the oversight and the evaluation. We will share those results with the board. Those evaluations will be based on goals that are established for the principal and the administrative staff and whether or not those are achieved at the end of the year. And then ultimately, the decision to retain, to promote, goes to the board, but it's done on our recommendation based on the evaluations that we do. So we're not going to fire a principal. That would be the board who would have to do that.
But if I'm a teacher at your school, and
Teachers are managed by the principal.
Yes.
well, that's what I wanted to be clear about.
Teachers are managed by the principal. You're going to give them, my understanding, what you said is you're going to, you'll give them their evaluation model. You train the principal on how to select the teachers.
We'll
and
do the
you'll-
instruments for them. We'll provide training for the administrators to do the evaluations. We will provide evaluations for the principals that we share to the board.
They're the school district. I mean, this is what
Central
EMOs do. They're the central office or CMOs. They're central. My question is always going to be,
Why?
do charter schools need a central office?
Well,
Because
particularly
that's
when
what
you
we
have a
see
board like
happening
this.
is, basically, why are we recreating what we've already said doesn't work?
Why are you spending out $250,000 this first year when you have a board that is very capable?
And a CMO who says that they won't support you. I mean, some of these others, if in fact you have financial deficits in that first year, they supply. This agreement clearly says they're not gonna pay for anything they don't have money for.
And
So,
didn't they-
so there's not the financial backing like, say,
That you would have,
NHA.
no.
NHA
No.
says if you run a deficit, we cover it.
Yeah,
Charter
they
schools
don't
say
do
This
that.
does not do that.
They do not do that.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of times what you'll have, what's happened in the Northeast is, you'll have, multiple schools come together, or a school, opens, and then the school says, we want to open another school. So now we're going to centralize services, because it's actually much more complicated when you try. I mean, this is what KIP has done. When you add another school into the portfolio, then it gets then you can say, okay, we actually need to design a more uniform selection model, because we're selecting teachers on two campuses. We want to ensure, reliability and validity between how we select those teachers. That's when it becomes more necessary. I think sometimes when you're talking about one school, I think you have to ask yourself, well, if you have a strong principal, I mean, part of it is just, hiring the right leader is that's the most important decision a board makes. You hire the right person, you're positioning the school and putting the school in a good position.
Go
But
ahead. and-
one of the reasons that we approve EMO, CMOs for schools for startups is because the cost of startup is so expensive.
Right.
In schools, but they aren't getting any support for that.
Okay, let's let them respond to that.
Yes, if I may, a couple of issues. The first thing is, I can say this, the board is very well qualified. However, we understand that there's gonna be a need for day-to-day operations. This is why companies have COOs, and that's why it's such an important position. Frankly speaking, we don't have the same level of expertise in things like who to contract with busing, who to contract with to do any of our accounting and auditing, and so forth. So they're going to advise us on that. I feel very confident in our ability to oversee that. But are we going to hit bumps along the way if left to our own devices? Well, sure we will. I do believe in the background and the ability of the people who are leading this new development, charter development solutions. They do have a proven track record. I think they've always been successful. And with regard to the financial backing, while CDS, like you say, is not an established company, they're not guaranteeing us any money. Our contract does permit flexibility to reduce their fee. So their fee can be reduced to basically the level at which our contractors or the people they contract with charge them. So they're making absolutely nothing in addition to that. And that's That's in our contract. So we do have some built-in flexibility on the financing. While we're not being guaranteed any dollars coming in, that does help us with the outflow, dollars flowing out. It won't flow to them if we're having trouble meeting our costs.
Okay, let's go back and let's just even take this transportation contract, okay? If you have a contract with the transportation company, you're gonna have to pay what that contract is.
Yes, ma'am.
What I'm hearing you say then is that CDS is going to be flexible, and if the money's not there, they would be the ones that would not be paid, the
Yes.
2.579 million.
They're the last pocket to be filled, yeah. All the contractors get paid, and in fact, the board doesn't, in our contract, we're not responsible to pay them anything if we don't have those revenues. We don't have to pay them anything above, if we don't hit our revenues, we don't have to pay them anything above what their contractors charge them.
Okay, but it sounds like that you've got money in your budget to pay, say for example, the bus contractor.
We do.
Okay, so they're not gonna be paying that contractor.
They're not gonna be paying the bus contractor. They are gonna pay, for instance, the auditing company. I believe that they're also paying for testing and so forth, and marketing companies, and marketing costs.
But isn't there money in the budget for marketing as well?
No, there's not budget money in the
There's
budget
no
for marketing.
money for
I mean, but like, how much are we realistically spending on marketing?
Not
I
2.5 million.
Not much.
I mean, maybe, I guess I don't know, I mean,
But again,
and then financial, you're not paying a finance firm because you have a finance officer. So you're
sorry?
are you gonna pay a firm as well as have a finance officer?
and they will
Is
be.
CDS gonna do it?
Yeah, Acadia, yeah, we're using Acadia.
So we're just
North
passing money through, basically.
for that piece, yes.
So CDS is not doing the bookkeeping and financial piece for the 256 for the first year.
Not in-house is my understanding.
No, they are, because so CDS, so on their budget, they don't have finance and student accounting. Or is Acadia gonna do the student accounting too? So, is that right? Yeah, the board chair says yes, so right there, that's what, for the size of the school, it's probably $40,000, $50,000 that will just get passed through to,
And
to,
the-
so
and
that's
the
part of
audit
it.
Too, the audit.
There's no money in there for audit.
I didn't see any money for audit.
So that comes out of their fee too?
First
They pay it themselves, they pay it, CDS pays it?
CDS pays for that.
Well, when they
There's
talk
no
about
audit
startup
cost
funds,
in
it
the first
says, CDS shall use reasonable efforts to secure startup funds for the school through grants, loans, or donations. That's not a whole bunch of security. I mean, how's that different than any other school that starts up that doesn't have backing?
Well, it's just the board doesn't have to do it.
They don't have to apply for the grants.
They don't have to apply for the, I mean, that's my understanding. The board's not gonna be applying for grants. The board's not gonna be doing anything except looking at your management company.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct. We're depending on the management company, and that's why we send in the letters of credit.
The other thing that, that I when I look at you got to look at the scale of the expense, because in year one it's not a huge expense vis-a-vis your whole budget, but in year three, if all is well and you fill your school up and you have I think the application is fairly well written, $600,000 a year is going to the management company. You might not need schools that get established like you don't even need to market anymore because the kids just show up and half of them are siblings. If you're doing your books right, if your finance officer's doing a good job, audit's no problem. Those things get on autopilot for schools that are well managed very quickly. And I, frankly, that's part of that's how EMOs make money. That's how CMOs make money, because the hard part is in the startup, and then it gets on autopilot, and then the actual work is, it's happening at the school. You hire good teachers, 3 years in, you don't really, professional development gets a lot easier.
The one thing I will say on this too is I feel like this board is a very strong board.
This is a good board.
A very competent board.
Good board.
And I think, to me, I don't want to necessarily second guess their decision to say, we think that we're gonna need this CMO. I think they probably didn't, but with the strength of the board, I think that's a decision that they have to make. I think it's something that's a little different than what we're used to seeing. But I mean, like, I think it says something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the education plan, because I thought the education plan was pretty good.
Except for the goals.
I thought the goals, that's one of the things I wrote down, is I thought the goals were a little weak. But as far as,
We just got stuck here on
felt
this
like it was
piece.
kind of laid out, but
Well, and why don't we move on and go to the other pieces of that, and we can come back later and talk about this, because I agree with Stephen that the board has made this decision. And I remember back in the 90s, I was asked to be on a board, and my first thing was get somebody who can handle it, because I don't have time.
Thank you, yes.
So I understand it's not for the faint of heart to start a charter school.
So the thinking seems to be along the lines, instead of the board hiring a school director who then has responsibility for all the oversight to hire and do the day-to-day fundraise, whatever it may be,
Yes.
you're hiring a management company in lieu of a school director.
Yes, sir.
Does
That is
that
correct.
sound right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
With, and I'll just end with this though, but with the understanding that if the money's not there, the management company is the last one to be paid.
Correct, yes, ma'am. They only get 50% over the surplus.
Okay.
So we have to have a surplus 50 in order for them to get paid.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and go to the missions, purpose, and goals, and let's start discussing that. We said the goals were weak. Does
When you're
anybody have-
looking at reading 58% math, 56% by year 5, I just thought that was kind of low.
Well, I think that's reflective of our area of the county. If you look at our target population that we're trying to serve, our goals are actually very ambitious, and they are higher than the elementary and middle schools' reading and math scores. That is why we want to see a charter school in Guilford County that does promote rigorous academics, because we do believe these kids can perform higher if given the opportunity. But they are reflective of the demographic of kids we're trying to reach. So it will be rigorous, and our goals will be relevant to the area in which we're trying to place a charter school.
Now, my understanding is you have a weighted lottery.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, it was, I didn't see the percent.
25%.
25%.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then those applicants that do not get in within the 25% will be put back into the normal lottery as well.
Okay. So that's how it's weighted.
Yes.
All right. Can we move on to the education plan? Any other
I mean,
questions?
I still think the goals are low. I mean, do you think the goals are low?
Particularly since they're saying that they're gonna be like Cornerstone, they're gonna be, like Piedmont, but they don't expect the same kind of outcomes evidently.
Cornerstone is in a different part of the county. The type of kids in the demographic we're trying to reach will just be completely different than where
And
Cornerstone.
you're gonna start K-6 in year
Yes, ma'am.
one. So
Yes.
you're anticipating getting students in 3rd grade through 6th grade that may already be
Yes.
academically behind.
Yes, that is, we're fully expecting that. And so we will have tutors available. I think our budget calls for 1 tutor year 1, but we will increase to 2 tutors that will work specifically with kids that are not meeting grade level expectations.
So in the deep purple area.
Yes, that is the area of the county that we're gonna
The
try
two
to reach.
sections,
Yes,
those
ma'am.
two
And so
sections.
the yellow is the schools that are represented in that part of the county.
Did you take the performance of those yellow
Yes, ma'am.
schools? Okay, that's
Yes.
what that is then.
No, but it doesn't apply to all the maps like that.
I know, that's what I don't understand.
It may apply in this particular case, but on the other ones, there's yellow and red in that area, so.
Okay.
My question on, with the classical education, it's very rigorous and, it builds from each level, from lower elementary to upper elementary into middle school. So is it I mean, what difficulties are you anticipating, with the kids that you get in third, fourth on up? Because they haven't been exposed to a classical education. You're saying you expect them to be behind, and now they're gonna be put into this rigorous program. So how are you gonna compensate for that?
I'm going to let my doctor of education answer that question.
Yeah, it's a great question because having worked with many schools where we have new students coming in, not knowing what their background might be, not knowing what their achievement level might be, you are correct. We are anticipating getting students who may very well be far behind third, fourth, fifth grade. So with the programs that we are anticipating having, there are going to be opportunities to look at the individual needs that those particular students might have. First of all, through their previous testing records that come from feeder schools, but also looking at assessments that we are going to do at the beginning of school and making sure that they are meeting grade level or level standards. And then when we have students that are not, then we have assistance programs, the school assistance team or student support teams, where we can have tutors come in, we can have volunteers come in to assist and to help. And if you look at the various levels of interventions, when you look at RTI, response to intervention, we're anticipating, normally you would anticipate about 80 to 85% of your students already meeting that tier 1. So we're anticipating somewhere around 70%, which means that we're going to have a need for more volunteers and more interventions those first couple of years as those students progress through the grade level. So we are anticipating that, and we're looking at those particular tiers as we have a response. And we're also anticipating students who have an IEP and making sure that we're employing certified special education teachers that begin to address those particular needs as well. Either and or pulling students out periodically for instruction, or sending that special education teacher into the classroom to assist with either individuals or small groups of those students in that classroom where there might be a specific need in language arts or in math.
Okay, any other questions?
I mean, your year 3 goals, reading and math, are basically they're roughly at where Guilford Prep is, where Gate City Charter is. I mean, what % of the students are you expecting to be low income at the school?
You said 40%.
Yeah, I think around 45% will be low income.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of like,
60% should be on grade level already.
I mean, if that's true, statistically, students that are not low income in North Carolina which it would be the majority of your school, are already performing above your year 5 goals.
So these are our first year goals. Those are our before even getting a school open goals. And
I'm
one
talking
thing we
about
will
reading and math in year 5, 58 and 56%.
Yeah, what we'll do every year is reevaluate our goals, and if we're achieving goals at a faster rate, in other words, we're performing higher, we'll adjust our goals upward every year. So this is an initial goal setting with the demographic information and school data that we have today. We'll adjust every year.
I mean, I appreciate the desire to be realistic. I mean, it's stupid when people come up here and say they're going to have 100% of the kids on grade level, but I don't know. I mean, I think the state board's going to look at that and they're going to say, why are we approving a charter that's telling us their data is going to be basically, I don't know, roughly the same.
I'd like to ask the question in relation to that. How were those proficiencies determined? How did they land at those goals? How were those goals set?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
The goals for proficiencies for years 1 through 5, how were those determined by your board?
Part of that will be through the assessments that we do and as well.
No, sir, I'm asking, how were the goals determined on the front end?
When you were writing the
You
application.
identified these proficiency goals. How were they determined?
The proficiency goals are set looking at the surrounding public schools, and I think that's what you see in yellow. We drew from public schools in the area, the middle schools and the elementary schools, to see what their proficiencies were. We're basically drawing from the 5 closest elementary schools, and I think the 3 or 5 closest middle schools, I'm not sure which, taking those numbers from the population we'll draw from and elevating them because we think we're going to be able to do to get them their scores higher. And that's our goal, is to improve the education of this of the folks in this geographic region, and I think we can do that. And as Mr. O'Day said, we'll certainly upwardly adjust if we're doing better than expectations. We don't rest on our laurels. We'll keep saying, okay, well, we'll do better.
The yellow dots are LEA schools and the red ones are charter schools, correct?
We don't have the names of any of the LEA schools though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're right there.
They're on your map,
You
sir.
have to
Elementary.
squint to read them.
Oh, okay.
They're right there.
And the yellow also represents a lack of charter schools in that area, in that particular areas.
One thing I know that will probably come up if this application proceeds to the state board, and I want you to take your time and fully explain to me the innovation that you see in your education plan. Every school, all the yellow schools, the red schools, all schools and public schools in North Carolina follow the North Carolina course of study. Sometimes I think if a school follows the North Carolina course of study, then people think that's not innovative. We teach subtraction in all schools. How is your school's education plan innovative from the yellow dots that are up there?
I believe what we're offering through classical and core knowledge curriculum is different than traditional Guilford County schools. We're also not putting an emphasis on technology, which I believe and have heard is a big part of Guilford County schools' lesson planning. And so if you're not familiar with core knowledge, it's not necessarily innovative, but it is different. It's saying that each student has the need to know certain core things before they can go and, as we put, be productive citizens in society, which we just mean that they have certain understanding of how our world or how our country works, how we integrate morals into societies, which I think is our character education plan is different than Guilford County, that our students will be given the opportunity each week to have a different character lesson, whether that be integrity or courage. And as a mother, sending my kids to a school where I know those character qualities are continuously reinforced from their teachers to their principals, and it kind of permeates the culture of the school, that is invaluable to me. I also think we have the ability to discipline differently through I think it's called multiple tier structures. And again, as a parent, that just gives me great confidence in this charter school. And I really enjoyed reading the fact that we're going to be using Shirley English, which is grammar, which is not currently offered in Guilford County. And we're also going to be using Saxon Math, which is different. And core history and core science is also different as well. So, and the core knowledge curriculum, it goes over into the arts and into the musics. And so I really enjoy reading the education plan as a parent as well. I do think it sticks out very differently from Guilford County.
Can you tell a little bit, you have these 4 pillars.
Yes, sir.
That are there. One of them is character education, the other is student responsibility. Can you kind of talk about those a little bit?
So character education, as I mentioned, our students will come in every morning and have an assembly. We'll there recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll also kind of talk about as a school different character traits that we see exemplified in students. Well, I think it's called the Bill of Rights Institute that has these character education plans that we will follow, where we'll talk about morals and integrity and character. And then student responsibility means we just want each student to be actively engaged in their education, so they are doing their homework. That's part of our goals, is that each student will be responsible for doing their homework and being involved in the community. We'll have students doing community service outreach along with their parents, which I think also is a win-win. So we want them actively, they're not just coming to school and sitting there and listening to the teacher, they're actively engaged in what they're learning and benefiting the community around them. Becoming good citizens, as we like to put it.
I mean, and let me ask our chair, is that good enough when you, if you were to present that, the innovation part of this?
I mean, I mean, it's a classical school model. I think, you know, they're kind of. I mean, we've been down this classical road many times. I mean, I like classical education. My own children are taught in a classical environment, but you know, I mean, I don't having assemblies every day. I mean, I think there's plenty of traditional schools that are doing that. I mean, that's not particularly innovative. I didn't find the application innovative outside of the, you know, there's lots of core knowledge schools. There's,
But not in
within
Guilford
the
County.
district.
I mean, Gate City is core knowledge. I'm certain.
No,
right?
it's not. Cornerstone is, and it's about a 40-minute drive.
Cornerstone.
And
I mean,
Summerfield will be open, but it will be about a 30-minute drive for us as well.
I mean, I think that's just kind of a question that state board member
Gonna
likes to ask, is what is innovative, what is different? I mean, and you're talking about Shirley Grammar and in a core knowledge. I mean, that's definitely different than what the LEA's doing. In that regard, how you got to find teachers that can do that.
Well, that brings me up to my question, and I looked at the professional development that was listed for teachers, I think the 8 days before school started. 2 days are devoted to core knowledge, the math, whether it be Saxon or Eureka, in combination with Shirley English, they're only given 1 day. And then the emphasis on classical is only given a half day. Yeah, this is the backbone of your educational plan. It just doesn't seem like a lot of time to train staff unless they come in with this and.
Okay, I think they're gonna address that particular thing, and this would be the job of the management company then?
Yes,
Okay.
and I have specifically coming from the background of Cornerstone Charter Academy, which we did use the core knowledge curriculum, the Saxon math, and the Shirley English when the school opened in 2012. And that program was absolutely different from what was being done in Guilford County. And in fact, the Greensboro Academy school that was still opened had actually stopped using Saxon math. And so when we implemented that at Cornerstone, we saw growth in a lot of areas, and then we also saw some things that were not aligned with the state standards. And so we immediately, within that year, updated things, made some changes in things to make sure that our students were getting the classical education and the curriculum that we put in our charter, but then we also made sure that it was aligning with the standards so that the school would be aligned with what the state requirements were. And so we continued to do that over the several years. In addition to that, the board of directors had been through the early training because we were a fast-track charter school that year, and so we were with that. And so we also worked with not just those first 10 to 14 days in the summer with the teachers to help them understand how to implement this curriculum, but we worked with them on a daily basis. And there were some teachers that came from schools that had this background, and then there were other teachers that did not, and they worked together. And so that is the plan that we will be doing with the Charter Development Solutions, is to make sure that the teachers are coming in and understanding and working with them all along through the year, as well as working with the board and helping them understand the training and the governance and oversight that their responsibilities are for being on a board of a charter school.
Ms. Reeves, did that answer your question?
I just did the math on the goals. Based on the schools that are on the board there, the number that I got was 62% proficient in combined score in reading and math based off of the state school report card data spreadsheet.
And what's their first year?
Their fifth year goal's 58.
So I'm curious where you're getting that data from,
Right.
because like this school up here, Brown Summit Middle School is
Oh
in.
yeah, it's a magnet school.
Yeah.
They pull from all over the county, and it's a great school.
Yeah, I mean, the other ones, if you'd have to toss out 2 of the middle schools, and then you'd be more around.
Yeah, we
Probably
didn't take Brown
50%.
Summit Middle into consideration because it's not a district school. You have to apply for it. It's a magnet school.
It's like a charter school.
Correct.
We also didn't consider the 3 charter schools that border there.
Yeah, I don't know if they consider those. I just think they're.
Oh, sorry. Brown Summit Middle is academically gifted, so it is not.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So it's an academically gifted magnet school.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
In the Brown Summit.
Yes, but only charter schools are creaming students, right?
right. Did you hear that comment? I don't know if you heard the comment. Somebody said, and it is one of the myths that come out about charter schools all the time, is that we cream students. You know, we do that overall. Whereas an academically gifted magnet school kind of creams the system too with a magnet school.
It doesn't matter because.
So that's why. Just made that point. Any other questions?
I have a
comments?
question about, I think I read in the application, a reference to merit pay or merit bonuses for teachers.
Okay.
If they could address that, how that would be structured.
Who would like to address that, the merit pay for teachers? Or the pay schedule for teachers?
Someone will address that.
Okay, there you go.
Part of what CDS is contracted to do is to evaluate our teachers, evaluate our administrators, principal, and so forth. We will be getting reports on who's doing a great job, who's doing an exemplary job, who needs improvement, who's average. There is a merit pay portion to our budget whereby everyone has a salary, and then exemplary teachers will have the ability to get an increase in their pay based on merit pay. That's going to be determined by the board. That's going to be influenced by what CDS tells us, what the principal tells us about who's doing a great job, what maybe performance they're giving in the classroom, or what they're getting out of their students.
If the CMO is evaluating the teachers, who in the CMO is going to be in the school to do that? Like, you can't evaluate teachers from someplace else. So,
Right.
So who is the CML placing in the school to do things like evaluate teachers?
The principal reports directly to the CMO. The principal actually reports, and this was part of the dual employment. The principal reports both to the board of directors and to the CMO. We wanted to create a situation whereby there was some accountability to both bodies. And so the principal will report to the CMO about things like how well teachers are doing.
But then that's not really the CMO evaluating teachers.
CDS has created rubrics in order to try to gauge the performance of teachers. And so they're helping standardize that on how we might be able to do a better job. It's hard for one person, right, like a principal to evaluate a couple dozen teachers. So we want to try to put some standardizations in there. I think we will have to ultimately rely on the board to say, what weight do we want to put on the opinion of the principal? What weight do we want to put on this rubric? And what do we see with our own eyes in the school that tells us this person is doing great? They deserve to be appreciated by merit pay.
Is the evaluation rubric in the application?
I don't believe that it is, but I'm not sure.
So the evaluation rubric was not put in the application as far as I know. I know from in my past, we have had a rubric in the other school that I have worked with. And again, it does come from the administration that puts forward the grading, say, I'll use the word grading, for the teachers. And then that rubric went to the board because we did not have a management company. And then the board would work with the administration on approving the bonuses and the merit pay that they would have. And so the same thing with the Charter Development Solutions will do is the administrator will present that and we will work with them. We're not going to oversee everything that she puts forward or he puts forward as the principal, but we will work with them and help them develop that so that the teachers can get the merit pay and the rubric will stand forward for what those teachers should be getting for merit pay.
Ms. Hall, does the rubric or evaluation have anything to do with student performance, or is it purely teacher evaluation?
I'm not positive about this current one. I can tell you that was the case in one of the original ones at Cornerstone. It did get modified, and I don't believe they actually have a rubric right now, although when I left the board last year, my understanding was they didn't actually have a rubric. But yes, that would be an area I would stress that they should have for as student evaluation.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Who's the board treasurer? Or someone said that, okay. Talk to me about about the value add of the management company for the dollars that this board is gonna expend for this. Cause that's where I remain stuck, obviously, that's obvious, but, what do you as a treasurer?
I can tell you as a treasurer, as a consultant in the healthcare industry, what I do, I don't know the first thing about operating a charter school. What I do, I have a lot of passion about. I want to see kids in our area well educated, and I want to be part of that solution in any way I can bring my talent to that. Day-to-day operations of the charter school is not one of them. These folks know how to run charter schools. I've met with them both. I've met with all of them extensively. So I'm really confident in their ability to run a charter school, and that's something I know that a strength that I don't have. I may have it after that, a year or two from that, the time we open, but that's just not a strength I have today. So I put a lot of faith. We as a board put a lot of faith in them to set up and run the school initially. In our best judgment.
Can I ask as a follow-up to that, and maybe the board attorney might want to help answer this? How well did you scrutinize the management fee structure on page 8 of the agreement, that subsection C? That's very confusing wording. Did you take that from a template of management fee structures, or did you create that, or did they create that and give that to you? Because I'm looking at,
I'll let Mr. Kreider.
Very.
He likes to. He's definitely the guy for this contract.
It's in the appendix under the management fees, section C on page
8.
Page 8 of the management fee, page 93, I think, of the appendix.
Page 93, okay.
It just seems
Is
like a
everybody there?
very confusing fee structure that is going to be difficult to argue back and forth. Well, what's 10% of revenue from the budget at the beginning of the year, and how do I adjust that monthly? And yet, if I have a surplus less than 50,000, I don't owe anything, but you've already paid 10% throughout the year.
Right.
I just don't understand that structure, and it's
How
a
that
new
works.
company, so that concerns me.
Sure, and it's a very fair question and a good point. I mean, we don't want our contracts to break down. We have a small line item for professional fees, and we don't want a lot of legal fees. I think what this contract seeks to do is this. It recognizes that we are a first-year school. It recognizes there are some unknowns that we don't know yet as far as, well, how many students are we going to get to enroll in this? We have great projections, mostly because we've relied on the expertise of people at Charter Development Solutions who have opened a few Guilford County charter schools, and they kind of know what numbers to expect. But this reflects, number one, that we don't have a history of revenues. And so we don't know what those exact numbers are going to be, and it gives us flexibility.
Okay.
And so what you're saying is, how do you do that day to day?
Right.
I think, well, at the end of the term, I think you can look back and say, this is what's owed, not, not the 10% bar, but we can invoke the contract to say, well, we don't have these revenues, we're giving you less money. And they have to show us the contracts that they have wherein they're outlaying money.
Right. So as an example, the 250,000 that first year is 10% of the projected 2.5 million. You're gonna divide that by 10 or 12 over the year and pay that on a monthly basis. Well, what happens if expenses in other areas start to exceed? How are you gonna know how to adjust that month to month? And
Right.
then part two of my question is, 10% of annual revenues, I could agree with that, that makes sense. Is this board understanding and comfortable with and 50% of the school's annual surplus in excess of 50,000? If you bring in a big grant and you have a surplus of $500,000,
Right.
you're okay with 50% of that additional surplus going to the management company on top of the 10%? I mean, did you guys have deep discussion about those fees?
The discussion we had about that figure surrounds this concept. We want Charter Development Solutions to run this school well. We want them to run it efficiently and effectively. And I want to give them some, there's a carrot and a stick. The board's good at giving the stick. What's the carrot? There's got to be, we gave them the ability to say, if you beat projections, you save too. We save, you save. And so that's why we put that in there. Might there be, sure, you can foresee difficulties. What I've always told people when I was a judge on the bench, I said, I never made a perfect order. If someone wants to monkey around with it, if someone wants to operate at the margins of it and not operate in good faith, then they can find a way. But I will say this, as an attorney, CDS drafted that portion of the contract, and it would be construed against them in a court of law and in favor of us. And so I think we get the benefit of any ambiguity in that contract.
Well, I have to say, I feel a lot better that it sounds like you've really gotten into that and you understand it, whereas in the past, sometimes boards didn't understand what was in that contract. So,
Right.
so I wanted to hear that.
And it's a fair question to say, if we have some grant that's supposed to give us a years-long benefit, I think that needs to be exempted from the sort of annual budget to determine
Yeah,
revenue.
but that's not clear in
not
here,
here.
you know,
That's right.
you
That's
don't wanna
fair.
end up in court and
That's a
say,
fair
well, you owe us $500,000.
Also, it's 10% of all revenues, but any
Plus.
federal revenues you have cannot go to the management company. But you're still paying 10% of that, so that's actually more than 10% that you're paying.
Well, we'd have to exempt then federal funds because,
But that's
but
not what
it's
it
still
says.
10%
That's not
of
what the
all
contract
revenues.
says.
okay,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
And what we're looking at is, say for example, you earn a grant. That's money that's being taken away from those children that you're desperately trying to serve.
Right, right. And that can certainly be amended. And I think probably that's a good point made by this body to look back at that.
I guess, is anyone on the CMO, have they been a charter school principal or executive director?
My understanding, of Cornerstone,
I was the board chair
So-
and founding board member, but no, I was,
Has anyone been a charter school executive director?
no, not anybody from the three of us here. Mary Catherine Sauer, who is part of the charter development, she was temporarily and will be a principal at the other Revolution Academy.
So
But
she'll be running another school.
Well, she'll be running that school. She is not really running the charter development solutions. She is part of it because she wanted to get it going. But she will really be kind of pushed out to the side and just be on the board because she founded it. But no, she will be running the charter school, Revolution Academy.
In their sister schools, but they're not both run by CDS.
No, the Revolution Academy, we'll call it Revolution Academy 1, is not having a management company at this time. And I don't believe their board is supporting that at this point.
I guess to the board members, like if you had somebody who had run a high performing charter school on the CMO, I mean, you're kind of saying, hey, we don't know how to do this well. I mean, these folks were in the same position you were many years ago, and they figured it out. And I mean, if you look at your, what you have for a management fee, I mean, you could pay your principal another. You could find somebody really good for $115,000. Pay Katie $50,000. Throw another $50,000 on a marketing budget. You could hire a director of operations. In addition, pay that finance person. I mean, I just think you got to ask yourself. I don't think you all are giving yourself enough credit. I mean, yes, you're a volunteer, but that's the nature of signing up to be a charter board.
I think part of our thought process is, as a business owner myself, you go to law school, they don't teach you about running business. Hire your weaknesses. That's what we've done. And so, to your point, if in year 3 we've got a good handle on this and we don't think we're getting the return, the contract isn't for 10, 90 years or anything like that.
Would you hire somebody to run your law firm who hadn't been a lawyer?
Yes, most law firms do. Most law firms have operations managers.
Well, then hire an operations manager.
Well, that's what this company's doing for us. And most small law firms and startups don't have.
Are they going to work in the school building?
Sorry?
Are they going to have an office in the school building?
CDS? Yes. And we have an out in the contract after any academic year. If we don't believe that in year 3, if we think that we can do this without them, and we don't think that they're meeting expectations on their fees, we either renegotiate or we say, thank you, we're going to do it ourselves from here on in.
Okay, I think there's someone else on the board that wants to speak.
This is the point. You've got to hire in expertise. We're not getting married to this company. We're dating them for a couple of years to help us get it going. We in High Point, City of High Point, we contracted with an organization called Forward High Point to help us redevelop our city. Because of their expertise and because of us investing into that organization, we've now got $180 million of economic development in our core city. I don't know how to do that. I know how to run a good insurance company, a great limousine company. I know how to be a good Marine, but I don't know how to do that type of economic development. So to look at this dollar figure, it's kind of like the Judas curse is to say, that's too much money. Well, if the expertise get us to where we need to be, we still have to renew that contract annually. If we find someone that's a little more fiscally conservative, someone that spends that dollars for the betterment of the students better, we can recontract with another company down the road. But for right now, for the needs of what this board needs, this company, we've picked them out. And we've got a pretty smart set of board of directors, and we feel like this is the company that helped us get this school started and will be fiscally conservative. And we've got safeguards in there to reward them for being fiscally conservative.
I guess my question is, the part of the argument is being made about expertise, but no one who works for the company has run a charter school.
They've been heavily involved with charter schools.
But that's really different. I mean, being a board chair is really different than being the executive director of a charter school.
Well, it's sort of exactly what you're saying. The reason you don't want to do it is because as a board, you don't have that expertise. So you're saying, but we're hiring somebody who's been a board chair and they have the expertise that we don't feel like we'd have.
I do understand what you're saying, and so if I can go track back to that, when we opened a fast-track charter school, we had no experience in a lot of the administrators from charter schools. We were one of the new charter schools that was opening after the cap was lifted. And so while we were a board, we were part of the administration in the way operations were working. And those first few years, we really did, as a board, work with administration to make sure things were going well. We did not have everybody understanding what the rules and regulations were for a new charter school. In fact, as we see now with Revolution, and we're coming to these training sessions, and we're seeing all of these things that go into the policy manual and everything, it's coming from us. We didn't have that when that school opened. And now as charter development, because those of us that have had this experience, and while we're board members, we are not administrators, we have that experience, and that we will work with these people to get them up. And if at the end of the year they decide that they don't need our work anymore, then that's fine, then we step down. But this is to help this school get off the ground and to really work well And who's it for? It's for the children. It's the children of Guilford County that are in a low progress school area where they're not having the high levels that they need. And this is an area of Guilford County that we want to work with across the board. And again, if this board decides that they don't want our work, that's fine. We'll step down.
Except the contract says that this thing does not terminate, and that it's not what this says. This says it automatically renews and does not terminate, not even when the charter's renewed.
Well, according to our attorney on the board, I believe that he can revise that. I probably have Mr. Kreider step forward and say that. But that can be changed in any kind of a contract. Contracts can be denied and changed at any time. I think it was a 30-day,
The wording is all CDS may terminate. It says nothing about the board being able to terminate.
Yeah, we started 15.
I'll have to check with them, but my understanding was it was a 30-day.
Okay, let me wind this down though, because we're at 11:30 and we're supposed to end by 11:45.
I haven't,
Okay.
we talked in clarification with this group. We
Yeah,
talked about
we're
the
actually
name.
over time.
We are over time.
Yeah, we should discuss.
We
Okay.
talked about the name.
Let's discuss it. Okay.
And so the decision was made that they would become Revolution Academy Bunker Hill. And we talked about, the reason we were concerned about the name was confusion. In the entire hour that we've been talking
We've
to
not
them.
talked about that.
Well, they haven't said Revolution Academy Bunker Hill. Every time they've referred to the school, they've said Revolution Academy, and then we've had to say which one. Was that the first one or this one? And so that was the concern about using the same name. That if they don't develop a brand as Revolution Academy Bunker Hill, which means you need to say it every time, or you need to call yourself Bunker Hill, we're gonna have that confusion, and that was why it was brought up in the first place. And so now we've been talking about this for an hour, and not one time did anybody say Revolution
Yeah.
Academy Bunker Hill.
Good point, Cheryl.
Close discussion.
Let's
Close
just have
questioning.
discussion, and we're gonna close the questioning, and we're gonna have discussion on it and make a decision, board. I'll just make a few points. The board is very strong. Cheryl, that is a good point. Is that not something that can be fixed during the ready to open process?
They just need to be conscious of it, that they need to use
Right,
the
that-
whole name.
Right, or do something,
Or we can change it. We will.
make a change on that. The board is very strong. I have some concerns about the contract with the EMO, and I think everybody, or CMO, and everybody at this board knows there has been issues before with contracts that have put charter school boards in jeopardy. So that's why we are so concerned about this contract. However, the board is strong. The location of the school, there's not charter schools in the area. And I do like the
Well,
innovation.
that's a big area, so you don't know where it's gonna be.
Can I answer?
Well, I know, but there's nothing in that corner of the,
But it could be right next
it could be right next to it.
Piedmont.
That's
Do you want to
right.
clarify where the school's going to be located?
Yes, I would like to clarify. We are looking in central Brown Summit area, which is,
Top?
yes, the top. So we're going to be looking at the top and northeast area.
Right up there.
Yes, and maybe even a little bit
Those are
towards
all
the east.
Away from all the
traditional
other
public.
charters.
Yes, ma'am. And we can also cross county lines with charter schools, so that will also benefit
Okay.
Rockingham
Thank you.
County.
Thank you,
So-
thank you. All right.
Alex, real quick, the facility for year one,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have a contingent facility?
We've talked to several facilities that have educational occupancy already available, and they are waiting for us to get a charter in order to move forward those conversations. But we have several churches and other business areas within the region that we have pointed
And
out.
the church is not Derek's church, is it?
No, ma'am. No, his is in central Greensboro.
Yeah, and in the facilities and things like that, remember, this is not an accelerated application, so they've got time to do that.
I just had a question about his church.
Yeah, good question. Any other discussion real quick?
Well, the break even in the application is listed as 301, and year one, the enrollment, I think, was 309. So, I mean, you have to get all of your students, basically. And as I mentioned earlier, briefly, with a model that's this stringent, classical, I think it's difficult to start as a K-6. Another piece about the application, which I brought up in our clarification interview that was problematic to me, was the reference to Revolution Academy as a sister school, you know, the strong bind there, and Revolution Academy has not opened. So we don't know what's gonna happen. They're in the RTO process. Those are just a few of my concerns that haven't already been expressed.
Okay.
I feel like if you're gonna, I think that they made a mistake in attempting to create this as a CMO contract. I think they should have just charged these people. These people should have just, CDS should have said, hey, $75,000, we'll help you get this school up and running. We'll do whatever, will be a consulting fee. But, you know, we're a new organization, but we have some experience. Let us help you get it going, and we'll collect a fee for that. I feel like to be a CMO and to have that value add, to sign up and say the state is gonna give you a grant for which we're giving you basically a $10 million or $7 million grant over the next 5 years, and 2.5 of that going to a CMO. I feel like the CMO's got to have more skin in the game. Either they've got to be building your building, or they're going to bring a significant grant to bear. They're going to say, we take full responsibility should you not net out the students necessary. I don't see that skin in the game. Also, I think they need to have some kind of experience running schools successfully for us to say, yeah, we're gonna potentially, because if this gets approved, yes, they could cut it if it didn't work, but we can't. We've already been down the road of making, we're not gonna make people cut their CMO. That's never gonna be. We could recommend it, but we're not gonna make that decision. I feel like, when we opened PAVE, we had a $1.2 million grant over 3 years that was gonna go straight to the school in Raleigh. PAVE had no management fee. They still pay no management fee to PAVE Schools. PAVE Schools was running a high-performing school in New York that was outperforming this New York City averages. So there was documented evidence that their model was working. So I just think, and they were saying, we're just going to give you money. We're just giving it to you and staff for no cost. And this is the opposite.
Right.
And without the experience to back it up. If they had the three best, school leaders that had opened schools in North Carolina, and all three of them, the head of the esteemed Greensboro Academy was part of this group, and I would say, okay, well, maybe this makes sense. These people are going to come together and, whatever. I don't see it. I don't think it passes muster.
Let me just say though, the PAVE out of New York, they had quite a bit of foundation money that came in with them also. I don't know.
Yeah, but
this is a homegrown, smaller grassroots group that's trying to become, I think,
But I think that part of when
they're trying.
Part of one of the reasons that we have approved schools going with CMOs is because the startup's so difficult, and they bring something to the table. I don't see. And it's the financial, I'm talking about the financial stuff they bring to the table. I don't see that here. We've seen them end up in court. Like, we've been there.
I know.
I think I trust this board enough that they're gonna hold the CMO to what the CMO's promising they're gonna do. And I think that's, anytime that I look at a school that's with a CMO or an EMO, I always look at, is the board strong enough to be able to hold the CMO to account? I do see issues with what the CMO is gonna provide and what the CMO's promising. I don't think it's necessarily a good deal for the school. But I think that this board could make it work.
And I would agree this is a strong board, but I do have concerns with the contract that they have with the CMO. And I understand what you're saying as far as this board will hold them accountable, but then a contract is a contract. And I don't think the contract is written in the charter school's favor at this point. It's very much in the favor of the CMO. And again, to Cheryl's point, I don't see what CMO is necessarily, they don't have any skin in the game as far as financial support. And when you look at their budget, there's a lot of holes in the budget, and they say, oh, well, the management company's gonna pay for that, the management company's gonna pay for that. So I have concerns because it's not, in every other budget that we looked at, that we approve, everything's outlined and say, this is, we're paying for, you know, Acadia, North Star, we're paying for other services, transportation services. They're not even detailed out because it's in that lump sum number. So there's a lot of questions, I feel, and I just don't feel like the accountability is necessarily there when it comes to the CMO piece.
Okay. Any other comments?
I struggle, going back to Sherry's point about a K-6 and a classical education, and you have kids coming in at 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, there's zero monies for instructional support. And you cannot assume that you're going to bring in volunteers and get them classically trained so that they can push in, pull out, to the level that will be necessary, I think, in the first year when you're jumping into something so deeply. And so I have concerns about the budget that way, that we're going to be making monthly installments to the CMO. However, there's no budgeted funds for instructional support with something that's classical and requires a lot of training.
I agree with concerns about language in the contract. It seems to be there are parts that could be loosely interpreted, and the school could end up hurting for that cause. And also, with Alex crunching numbers of the nearby schools, I would like to have seen the data that the board used to set those low proficiency targets in the next 1 to 5 years. It just seems not aggressive enough, or maybe ambitious enough to expect students to attain higher levels than that. Okay. I do think we talked about the innovativeness of the school, and maybe their curriculum does have a few components of innovation, but they do have unique features or strategies. They have the Move Up Math component, recess twice a day, a homework data collection that they'll be doing on homework completion, and early release for kindergarten optional. They have a lot of unique features that aren't found in other schools, and I think that's commendable.
Okay. Mr. Friend?
I share some of the same concerns. Also feel this is a really strong board. I think I agree with Mr. Walker on that. We didn't dive into it too much. I'm a little perplexed by some language in the application around how they reference personalized learning as if it's the opposite or somehow not what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, personalized learning is about empowering students to take ownership of their learning, giving them voice and choice in what and how they learn and how it's demonstrated. They kind of reference that in a way with Guilford County as if that's a bad thing that's happening to students in Guilford County. So I'm a little concerned about that. But as someone who is a chair of a board that doesn't have an EMO and was involved in the start, I do have an appreciation for, while they may not be coming with the EMO may not be coming with the financial, like here's a check. I think I don't want to dismiss the experience that the folks that have worked on boards of other charter schools who are part of the EMO. I mean, you can be a board member and still be very much bring great experience to the table to help a new school get off the ground. Some board members are more active than others.
Okay,
I'm obviously biased towards school leaders.
Having discussed
Reveal
it,
my bias.
do we have a motion? Okay, hearing none.
I make a motion that we do not move Revolution Academy Bunker Hill forward to opening status.
Second that. Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. And we've discussed it quite a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and all of those opposed?
Mr. Ford.
Okay.
Mr. Ford?
Yes, I support it.
Support opening the school or support the motion not to open?
Support the motion not to open.
Okay. All right,
All right,
So what's that count?
so that's,
let's go hands up for supporting the motion.
Supporting the motion?
Supporting the motion. Hands up high, high. You own your choice.
6.
7, right?
No, 6, well, 7.
Seven.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay. We are 15 minutes ahead of time.
No, we're on time now.
Oh, well, we have a break built in. So actually, do we want to take a 15-minute break? I
We
think
need
we
a short
probably
break
can. And because,
We need 15 minutes.
let's do 10 minutes. Let's start, can we start 5 before the hour? And NHA tends to be kind of fast. Although this is, yeah, I know.
For all you people that work in schools.
Yeah, I know, where you see lunch at 10:30 in the morning. Yeah, no, it's crazy. You're just
The
like,
kindergarten started at 10:30.
I hate being a bad guy. We served at 10:45 till 2 o'clock. I mean, if it would have happened later, it doesn't. Yeah, I was gonna make it.
I know, there was.
Yeah, I'll give you. So you can just do it however you want to. Yep.
Deal with life.
I mean, I think, see, that was $2.5 million they spent.
Well,
I just think we need to be
I agree.
protective.
How did we set such a low course?
The way that we develop CMOs.
And we talked about that in the clarification
You
too.
get
They had
it's in charter to create a CMO and then replicate this model and then centralize it.
I kind of feel like they'll look again in a couple of
But
years.
why did they do that? I don't understand. Why did they take Revolution? It's like they should wait a year or something. Maybe next year they should be managing both those schools.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense, because then you get economies of scale. There's no economies of scale with one school.
Well, to into the ready to open, right?
That's what I wonder.
Like the whole point of a school district is economies of scale.
Prove it like it is.
Like if you're doing it with one school, there is no economies of scale. What's the
Do
point?
that and trust in
Yeah, and I think it,
Just pay your principal. You could just pay your. I'll find you a great.
It would be nice to have, I look at it every time and think, oh, I've got it this time, and then I look at it the next time and think, I don't have it this time.
Well, and then last night when I was trying, I couldn't hardly see the pins.
That one was very blurry.
I have it on my computer now too. I was like, what's the word?
It'd be nice to have it, like, uniform, what that always looks like. What is it?
Also,
I think they need to explain it.
I'd like the distance to what's,
I know, it
because
really helps.
that,
Because that's where they're drawing from.
that doesn't, you know,
So I don't know what schools they pulled those scores from. They're saying, oh, they were so low performing that these are really goals. Well, like, show us. Why didn't they show
I know, it
us?
makes me want to create some type of something I look at each time that's got more work to do, right?
I'm sitting here.
No.
Like with Alex over there.
No, I'm
This
like,
pulled up the school scores.
I'm scrambling, like, where's this document?
Me too. Oh my gosh. I've got to, still, as I said, I would have, see what they could do with it. Of course, I'm new. Pro, so I looked at you.
There we go. All right, the chair just let me know that he was going to be recusing on this one. Is that right?
Yeah.
So he's going to recuse on Oak Grove Charter Academy. So we're ready to hear the introduction.
Okay, members of the board, the next applicant group to come before you is Oak Grove Charter Academy. They are proposing to locate in Durham. For their proposed enrollment, they intend to have 520 students in grades K through 5 in year 1, 604 students in grades K through 6 in year 2, 688 students in grades K through 7 in year 3, 772 students in grades K through 4 and beyond, and that will be their intended capacity. The LEA has submitted an impact statement for your review. No due diligence was requested. They have requested to replicate Wake Forest Charter Academy. This is not a repeat applicant, but they are partnered with NHA with no fees provided. The application was deemed complete.
All right, we'll have the board introduce themselves.
Good morning. It's still morning.
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 You've got 2 more minutes of morning.
My name is Gerald McNair. I'm the chairperson for Oak Grove.
And if y'all want to
Charter
just
Academy.
line up behind him so y'all can go one right after the other, introducing yourselves.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, great. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to brief you on why we are very enthusiastic about Oak Grove Charter Academy. First of all, I want to briefly introduce myself. I'm a graduate cum laude from Brandeis University with economics. I also graduated from Yale School of Public Health, New Haven. I played Division I basketball back in Providence College back in the day. I'm an adjunct professor at St. Augustine's University. I lived in Durham for 7 years. I live now in Granville County. I've lived there for 5 years. I've been extremely active in the Durham community. I was on 2 charter school boards in Durham. I also volunteered my time at a nonprofit organization working with mothers and children who were homeless. I volunteered my time at Meals on Wheels to work with seniors who were elderly in Durham, helping to feed them. And I'm also a father of 5 children, all of whom have gone to college and have now begun to make significant progress in this community that we live in. Over the past 12 years, I have been real concerned about the educational opportunities for children in Durham. I feel a disproportionate number of our public schools in Durham County are operating below par. Therefore, our children, I feel, are being denied educational opportunities to achieve at the highest level that they possibly can. I personally believe Oak Grove Charter Academy will provide high-quality, cost-effective educational opportunities for our children in Durham as well as in Granville County. I believe, with your approval and with the support of NHA, we will be able to meet and or exceed the goals of Oak Grove Charter Academy, which is to assist students to pursue college, assist them build strong relationships, develop skills and character traits, and to be key contributors in our community. At this time, I'll have members of our board introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Iris Garner. I have served the students of North Carolina for more than a decade in many different capacities. Working here at the Department in Accountability Services as a consultant and specifically working with the larger urban districts. I'm not only an educator and work to provide and assist in solutions, but I'm a parent. I have 2 little girls that attend a charter school, and I'm happy to report they are thriving. They're at the top of their class, and when they graduate high school, they'll be 1 semester away from an Associate of Arts degree. Given the fact that there's more than 7,000 students on a wait list to gain entrance into a rich education experience, 7,000 to me is half of a sporting arena. It represents a tragedy. It represents a sense of urgency. And with that in mind, I'm very hopeful that we're able to articulate the value that we'll bring to the community and make these opportunities available to all the students that are so desperately in need of solid educational experiences. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Robert Fountain. I bring you greetings from Granville County through Durham County. I lived in Durham County for approximately 20 years as I served as a gang coordinator for the Department of Public Safety, Division of Prisons and Community Corrections. I oversaw 100 county gang investigators for probation and parole in every major prison in our state. What brings me to this table today is the fact that Mr. Gerald and NHA saw that my knowledge about how our children are being lost in a prison, well, from the educational system to prison pipeline. How do we break that chain migration? We break it through educational services and opportunities. Living in Durham County, my son was a good kid. We were, growing up in a neighborhood where it was kind of affluent, I thought, at that time, until I saw the gang members start to rear their heads in our communities. So I had to make a hard decision. Do I stay in Durham or do I move to a smaller rural county, which was Granville, where an educational opportunity for my son would be greater? So we moved. He attended a STEM school. Now he's in college. Everything is going well. However, I've been afforded the opportunity at working at Polk Correctional Institution where we see 17, 18-year-old males go through a mandatory educational system that they were behind. But we saw the majority of the students, it was the education that brought them to the prison system. Because there was no structure and discipline in the educational system that they were in, they wound up in our prison system. So we have to start catching these kids young. And I remember a movie that Forrest Gump was in, I think The Green Mile or something, where he said you have to catch them young, catch them early, plant those seeds of responsibility in them, and then you will see a different change on the back end through the educational system. So with the experiences that I have, and with NHA's partnership, when I did a threat assessment on what they're going to bring to the table, the economic growth, the buy-in as far as funds and help supporting the schools, the dual supervision of staff and looking at the dean system that they have, looking at the lease agreement and the service agreement on the building and the options that we will have as a board to move away from it if we're not satisfied or to continue to partner with them. I looked at all those things and I said, Mr. Gerald, I'm committed to this process. So I bring you greetings, and if you guys have any questions, I'll be here all day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Jones, and I live in the Wayne County area, but I do work up here in Durham. I work with the Federal Aviation Administration here at RDU. Mr. Drill had talked to me about becoming a board member because of my work with Smart Choices for Youth. I was a mentor for at-risk teens, and I mentored several youth for a couple of years doing that, and I saw the need of a good educational system. I was also a foster parent for several years, and I saw that education is definitely a big part of these students, a big part of these kids' lives that can change them for the best. I think that moving forward, the opportunities that Oak Grove Charter Academy is going to present will be monumental, given the fact that in the area in which we're looking, there is a waiting list for students, and the opportunities that Oak Grove can present will be greatly beneficial to these students and the parents as far as option that they can have for the opportunity to get a higher quality education. So I would ask you to approve the school, and I think it'll be for the best for the community. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Milton Tabor. I've lived in Durham for over 40 years. I just recently moved to Granville County 2 years ago. and have always been involved with the youth. I work with the Durham Bulls and Durham Parks and Recreation, and working with at-risk kids. I was a coach from 2001 to 2015. I help provide a secure, safe environment for the kids. We set goals with the parents and everything. I'm an advocate for that every kid should receive a great education. At least they should have choices. And with your help today and everything, I would appreciate it if you go ahead and help us out with Oak Grove Academy. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm not a member of the board. My name is Lori Hill. I work for National Heritage Academies. I am one of 2 regional directors here in the state of North Carolina supporting our 13 schools. I currently work with our 5 schools that serve a higher poverty population here in North Carolina. I live in Davie County, North Carolina, and I've been with NHA for the last 20 years as a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and a regional director.
Okay. Oh, do we have one
Just
more?
one other person I'd like Phil to, you guys know him, but I want you to know that he's with our group.
Philip.
I am Philip Adkins. I have been in the charter school movement since the beginning. I represent 4 charter schools in North Carolina, 2 of whom are NHA schools, Preeminent and RTCA. And I am impressed with this board, and I've always been impressed with NHA. Thank you.
All right, we're going to spend some time now talking about the application among the board. I'll say it's a pretty standard NHA application. I thought it was a good application. Cheryl?
I don't have issues with the application. It's, it's the one that we've seen a lot. I do have a question though about, there's an Oak Grove Elementary School in Durham. Why would you name your school Oak Grove Charter?
Yeah, I think that's a question. We're going to ask y'all that question in just a minute. So that gives you some time to think about it while it's there. The one thing that I probably had concerns coming in is that I don't know if anybody on the board lives in Durham County now, but they all, when they were explaining, they all had such tie-ins to Durham, and it's not like Granville County's the other side of the state. I mean, it's right there. So, I that kind of took care of a lot of that concern that I had, because I'd written down, where the Durham people on the board, but they've all been invested in Durham over time.
With that in mind, Stephen, though, I still think they should have a representation from the county, so maybe if they could speak to the efforts to recruit someone from Durham
Or
County.
possibly during the ready to open process, if they would be open to that.
Want me to speak to that now?
We'll get to you in just one second. We're just kind of getting the feel of the lay of the land here. Anybody else have anything?
Well, I just would like some, and this may be coming from NHA, but just some assurances that some of the things that they put in place in some of those other high poverty schools that are different than their regular model, that those things are gonna be in place here as well.
That was kind of my question too, around what makes this school different and unique, and some of those pieces that they're gonna put in place that I haven't seen yet.
And I'm gonna take that a step further and do the same thing I did with the last one. Because I know this is gonna come out with the State Board of Education, what makes this innovative? And speaking, I think, probably specifically to your curriculum, and why is it different than a district school in the area?
Anybody else?
I guess, and I think we have a member on this board that's also a member on Research Triangle Charter Academy.
Yes.
Which is a school is that you, Mr. McNair?
Yes.
You're not choosing to replicate RTCA, although the demographics of that school parallel to what you anticipate for Oak Grove Charter Academy. Rather, the replication is for Wake Forest Charter Academy, which is a far different demographic. So that's a little concerning. And I think my biggest concern is the saturation issue in that section of Durham. I know Durham County and Wake County both submitted impact statements too, so.
If we've got I guess I just think if we've got 7,000 students on wait lists in Durham County charters, we'll probably be okay. I mean, if that is an accurate number.
Well, with that being said, and we're targeting a specific demographic. I know NHA doesn't provide transportation, so then that's my other concern. How do we assure that we get those kids into the school or, targeting that population?
Yeah, and my concerns are along with Sherry, and that's why I didn't know if they could give an update, if they know any more information of where they might be located, that would be helpful.
Anything else anybody has before we jump into the questions? Cheryl, why don't you ask your first question about the name?
Yeah, if there's already an Oak Grove Elementary School, why would you want to name your school Oak Grove?
Be perfectly honest, we not necessarily sure that there was another school by the name of Oak Grove Elementary.
There is.
And therefore, we thought of some other names. Be perfectly honest, it was just something that we felt was appropriate for that area. We could certainly come up with other names, but at the time, our feeling was there was no Oak Grove Charter Academy.
Yeah, the problem with that is that people say Oak Grove, they're not gonna, so
Right.
there's gonna be a lot of confusion. So I would hope that during Ready to Open, if you were to go forward, that you would change your name to something else.
We could certainly consider that, yes. Relative to the board members, being from Durham, we have 2 people that we have talked to, and we recognize the need and importance for residents of Durham to be part of our school board. Therefore, we've talked to and we've got applications from 2 to 3 people who are currently residents of Durham.
Can someone address the transportation plan, clarify that a little bit more, given the population?
Or maybe the facility too, with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The facility, where do you see it being located?
We haven't fully decided on the location yet, but if you familiar with Durham, it's gonna be, I would say, within a 3 to 4 mile radius of where Walmart is.
Where what is?
Walmart,
Oh, okay.
which is a high traffic area off 85, lots of traffic going back and forth from Durham County to Granville County. And we think that location has really a potential for growth for us.
Is there a neighborhood there? Like, my experience with large numbers of low-income kids is that their parents are not available at 8 and 3 to bring their kids to school and pick them up.
There is a neighborhood that's there, it's Gorman. And so we would rely heavily upon that neighborhood. Speaking of transportation, I recognize the need and importance for young children, particularly those that are low income, to receive transportation assistance if they need it. One of the things that we're gonna be doing is working closely with the parents to determine what the needs of the families are. And if we determine that transportation is a need, we will definitely provide it for our students.
Do you mean like in Mr. McNair in buses, you would, because that's not typically the
It's
NHA?
typically not the model for NHA. However, as I mentioned, if we determine, based on the need of our population base, that that's something that we need to do, we'll do it.
The Skate City bus? Does anybody know the Skate City bus or is the NHA lady? No.
I don't know if Preeminent, I don't think Preeminent does either, but I mean, they're still, and Preeminent doesn't bus, and they've got a good ADM and they're very high. I mean, I think NHA's figured out a way through other methods, be able to get these students to school. Maybe you can start and kind of say how NHA, if some of the things that, and Cheryl brought this up about some of the different things that NHA does in some of the schools that have more economically disadvantaged students, how that's going to play into here. Are those going to be available to y'all? And then maybe NHA can help answer that as well.
In terms of with students that are disadvantaged?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the big things that we have, just recently at Research Triangle Park, we had a group of, actually, what do you call it, a business quorum, where we invited businesses to come in from the community as well as in the area to represent various family members that were on, that have children going to Research Triangle Park. That was one of the big things that we did. It was an opportunity to get to know those businesses as well as for us to promote local businesses in the area. One of the things that we do relative to the low income is that we work with those students. I want to have our curriculum people also talk about that. What we do from a curriculum point of view to help students that are low income. But every effort is made to ensure that our low income students have that opportunity to move forward and to excel. Specifics of it, I'm going to ask Irish to come up and talk as well as.
In respect to providing adequate services for all students, there's a three level approach: expeditiously identifying the students, serving the students, and monitoring the students, so that we are flexible and adaptable in such a way that we are always providing that on-time instruction.
So specifically at our 4 schools that serve a higher needs population, and those schools are in about the 70 to 75% FRL range, we've added an additional dean there. We call it a dean of intervention. So there's a K2 dean, a 3-5, and a 6-8, and then there's also a dean of intervention that works directly with our at-risk teachers, reading specialists, math specialists, any additional personnel that serve students that are below proficient. In addition to that, because we don't always know what our free and reduced lunch or our Title I funds will be till pretty far down in the school year, NHA front loads those funds. So we look at what the FRL is as we open, and additional funds for systematic intervention are granted there, whether it's giving us X number of paraprofessionals, a dean of intervention, an at-risk teacher, so that we open with those personnel.
Would y'all be open, and so you think you would be open to adding a Durham member, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you talked about that.
Absolutely. In fact, I have 2 or 3 people lined up already, as
Okay.
I mentioned.
It
something
sounds
that-
like to me you've been very active, because almost everybody that got up there said that you had contacted them and talked about it, and I think that's great that you seem to have a lot invested in this school.
Absolutely.
And I think this board is strong and passionate about it, and I think this is going to be a great school.
I want to reiterate, I think you've got a very good, strong board, and I appreciate your efforts to do something different. With that, can you reiterate the difference of what this school, how this school, the curriculum, whatever, will be different or innovative from your district schools?
I'm going to ask Lori to talk about that.
Great question. So I think when we talk about innovative, it's how can you be different? How can you be kind of on the cutting edge of changes in education? And so we're going through some overhaul with our curriculum right now throughout NHA with our 80-some schools. We've actually adopted 2 new math curriculums. Of course, we focus on the North Carolina standards. Let's put that aside. That's a done deal. But we're using a Bridges program for K-5 math and illustrative math in 6-8, which had been traditionally only an online program. But we've taken that with our math specialist and rolled that out to all of our middle school teachers and developed new resources around that, developed online tools, developed homework assistance with a program that was specifically only online and actually free to anyone that wanted to use that. Both programs focus on a heavy conceptual approach so that students actually understand what they're doing when they're multiplying, not just memorizing facts. So that's starting as early as kindergarten. It's our first year with that. With our reading and our ELA, we're actually developing our own curriculum. So previously, we had used Reading Street and Holt Literature in middle school, and we just found those kind of boxed programs not to meet our needs. So we've been developing a read aloud curriculum focused in K-5, and then an independent reading program focused in 6-8, and we're rolling out those lesson plans to our teachers, and just using a heavy balanced literacy approach in K-5. So all of that training has been going on for about the last 12 months. And then a second rollout is coming for this upcoming school year. So,
And you would say that would be different, those curriculum
Absolutely.
pieces are different than what is being used in the district schools?
yep, because we're developing that on our own and really looking at that balanced literacy approach of phonics and vocabulary and comprehension is what we see that our students need. And so with our schools that are higher poverty, what we've also done in the K-5 group is we've infused corrective reading and reading mastery, which are programs to move kids quickly that are below grade level. So if let's say preeminent, for example, for preeminent for kindergarten through second grade, any child that is below grade level will rotate through a 25-minute session of reading mastery or corrective reading as they go through their reading block in the morning. So just looking at different ways to take the chunk of time that we have with them and make it as impactful as possible.
And didn't preeminent just exceed growth?
Yes, ma'am.
They sure did.
2 years
Wasn't
in a
it
row, I
8
believe.
point something?
That was 8 something.
Yeah, 8 point something, yeah.
That's really a success story, right?
Yes.
It really, it's been a privilege just to be a part of that and to watch them grow, but I would honestly give a lot of credence to the reading mastery and corrective reading, the things that we're doing in those early grades, and then keeping our kids. We've stabilized. So that's made a huge difference.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
I just want to say, we have to give a lot of credit to NHA because when they first wanted to go into Gate City, we gave them a hard time because of preeminent. And they made the changes that were necessary for those kids to be successful. And I think that says a lot about the company and their desire to see to it that kids are successful no matter what the needs are.
I think saying we gave them a hard time was probably an understatement. It was a really hard time that we gave them. But they persisted and continued to work. So anybody else have any questions for the board?
Everybody better though.
Yeah.
It really did. Really
Mrs.
did.
Alberts.
I mean, I think it's one of those things with a school getting denied the first time maybe
Made a huge
impacted other schools as well, and I think that's,
I guess just from our notes, are there familial connections on the board? Familial connections on the board? Anybody related on your board?
Yes, there is, yes. Kyle Jones is my son.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
6'4", didn't play ball. Don't mean a lot of jive. I'm just teasing.
Anyone on the board planning or hoping to work for the school, either in an administrative or teaching role?
Normally, I would consider that a conflict of interest, and therefore no.
any other questions? Any discussion then?
I wanted to make a motion, but if
Well, motions are always,
okay, I'd like to make a motion that we move Oak Grove Charter Academy forward to ready to open with the condition that they change the name from Oak Grove.
And I second that.
all right, so we've got a motion that we recommend ready to open status for to be named school of the board formerly to be known as Oak Grove Charter Academy. So we've got a second on that.
Okay.
So do we have any discussion on that.
I was just gonna say, if they could possibly get that before it goes to the state board, it
Yeah,
might
that
be
would be
good.
helpful.
It would be very helpful, I think.
We could take action next month and just change it. Fix it.
Well, they could, yeah. Then it wouldn't be an amendment, I don't,
Yeah, I don't, these won't go to the state board till February for first reading, right?
right, so you've got till February?
We'll get that done.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we don't finish till January,
Yeah,
yeah.
so can we go ahead and that wouldn't have to be an amendment that would have to come
No,
down or anything? You could
no.
do that before that? Okay, great.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and so you unanimously have been
Go for it.
moved forward. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The lunch is here.
And we finished 30 minutes early.
See how quick it goes when you
Yes, but there was no issue.
when we've read before.
Rick loses himself, it goes quick. Is that what he said?
I am in agreement with you.
Well,
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful.
it just goes fast when I have to recuse myself.
No.
That's what I thought Stephen said.
When I'm not allowed to talk.
Yeah, that's in it too.
I just want to recognize Phil Skibbs, who's in the audience.
Hey, fellas.
Board member emeritus. I believe she's going to join us for lunch and closed session. Or do we have any? We don't, it looks like no. Okay, great. So at this time, I'm gonna take a motion or move that. Can I just name that we go into closed session?
No, I think you have to motion, you have
Make
to
a
vote
motion
on
and
it.
We gotta vote on it. All right. All right. So I'm gonna move that we go into closed session.
To discuss with our attorneys, attorney-client related
Oh, you have to say
privileged
all that?
matters.
Yes.
That's right. That's true.
privilege dust over that motion.
Yeah, privilege. And we will have lunch and not adjourn, or we'll adjourn closed session and then just have lunch.
Yes.
And so we won't be coming back out after closed session until.
What time are we returning?
We're
2:00.
yeah. Well,
This week it's start back early.
if city charter is here, we can maybe start a little earlier. 1:30.
1:45.
Also, Miss White from Paula Brown is here already, so if we wanted, if the applicants are not here, she is here.
She's here now.
Yes.
Wow.
Do we want to just go in?
You wanna go ahead
Let's
and do
just-
that?
yeah, let's do
go ahead
that.
and do that.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Oh yeah.
You need to withdraw your motion.
Yeah, let's do
Well, the only
May we do that?
and then are we going to be waiting around for cyber?
Probably.
They'll probably come pretty close after lunch. They're usually here.
Yeah, maybe we could message them too and say, hey, see if you can get here a little earlier.
She has the board chair and commandant coming, so.
Okay, all right.
Let's
We'll
just
wait.
not
wait.
ready.
Let's just
Okay.
wait.
I second the motion to go into closed session to discuss matters with our attorneys that are privileged.
The attorneys are privileged or the matters are
The
privileged?
matters are privileged.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, Captain.
The reason this language has modifiers. You put things, modifies different things.
If we print out the Excel.
We didn't have Shirley Grammar in my school.
Yeah, one's word. And
All right, let me, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna download them, and I'm gonna send them, and then I'm gonna
No,
send
you
them.
don't get lunch if you don't call in.
Are we doing closed session first?
Yes.
Actually, do we need to, would it be better if somebody just called him? I think we're gonna have to, we'll just call you separately.